Let me unmute myself first before I start going all in. Hey, everybody, welcome back to another round. It's been a minute and now we back up in it. Yes, we have a great topic for you guys today. It affects us all in our community, and we're going to have a great discussion. So before I get into it and I start bringing people up, I want to say this discussion here is important to our community. So I want it to be a very positive, open-minded conversation that we have. We are coming up here to share each other's experiences and to gain understanding on how to better improve ourselves for the future, our children, as well as eradicate ourselves from the stigma that is placed upon us by other cultures. So, with that being said, I want you guys in the chat to please be respectful for all of our guests that we have today. They're sharing their stories, their experiences, which are not debatable. This is their opinions. I mean, not their opinions, but they're their feelings, and we must validate these accordingly, as well as we understand. Now, we can disagree on a few factors. That is true, and I want you to be respectful as we do that going forward. But I do not want you guys to come at anybody with no vitriol or any kind of things that you just feel in your heart because you have seen these people on TV or you've heard their podcast or you just don't like these people. That is not what we're doing here today. This is a place of love. We're coming for love. You guys know I love to have the fun, but we are going to be serious today. We might get some jokes in because y'all know me. I can't be too serious too long or whatnot. But, I just want it all in love for the most part. I do not want you guys coming in here with all the extra hate and extra stuff. Generally, with my crew, we don't have that here. We usually have a good understanding of one another. But, if you're new here, that's not what we do here, okay? We show love, respect, and everything. Please, if you're new here, please hit the like, share, subscribe to another person. You tell somebody that's going to tell somebody that tells everybody that they need to bring themselves over here to another round and enjoy more of us in this kind of content. This is Black History, well, not Black History Month. This is Women's History Month. So Black History Month is every month for me, baby, okay? But this is Women's History Month, so we're going to kick it off with this great discussion amongst beautiful women. We have some more coming in a little bit later. Show me some love in the chat. I love green, so throw me them green hearts up in there if you can. And also, let me do a couple of little maintenance things real quick before we totally get all of this here going. And I get my few guests. We got a couple of people running late, so they'll be on in a second. But yes, want to get some things up and going. Trying to get some things off, but all right, let me get my first couple of guests up here right now because we do have some that is on a time crunch, and I would like you guys to welcome her and tell her Happy New Year as well. Hello, Camille.
Hi. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, darling.
Hi, how are you?
Good. It is her birthday weekend, y'all, so y'all wish her a happy birthday.
Thank you.
As well. And let me get my girl Seaway up here. Hey, Seaway.
Hey, Camille. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
So I do want to start off. I know we got a couple more people coming in, and let me get my thing down so I can make sure I can see them. We got a couple more people coming in, but I do want to start off with the general question since we're all talking about colorism, because I know everybody has different POVs of what things are in this world. So to you ladies, what do you feel colorism is? Camilla, we'll start with you.
So for me, I've always understood colorism to be a system in which there is a privilege for women or men of a lighter complexion. It is something that allows them to reap certain benefits that one of a darker complexion wouldn't be able to attain.
And yes, I mean, similar for me, it's prejudice or discrimination based on the color of someone's skin, and usually the color is of a darker hue. So that's colorism to me, and it can be a system. And it's also individual actions, which I think sometimes people get that part misconstrued that it could be both things at the same time or one or the other. So
I agree with you both. I also look at colorism as like a tool, like the devil, that it hides in plain sight or whatnot. A lot of times it gets lost in a lot of translation of under guise of a whole bunch of other things, as far as racism, prejudice, or the simple "I just don't like that person," But it's a pattern that we tend to see in certain people, that they would continue to do it if you notice it. But if we just go one interaction off, they can easily hide it as just saying, "Oh, I don't like you." And if I never ask you, well, why you don't like me? It can get passed off as, well, it's not because of their skin. It's this, that, and the third. But there's something about me that you don't like. And I also look at it in a different light as far as self-hate. People generally will project their dislike for themselves in different ways. And a lot of times it's because there's something in your beauty that sets them off. So yeah, we're going to have this conversation today. It's going to be a little crazy, especially because every time we talk about this, it shouldn't be the light-skinned person leading this discussion and this, that, and the third, but it has to be led by somebody. I did try to get a couple of other people that are well versed in this on this, but they work as far as business and corporate it goes, and they go into the job. So I have to respect their platform and how they get their money. And I would love to have her on because this is her field. But I'll go ahead and take the reins from here. I'm not trying to be nothing or whatnot. Let me get one more person on. Hey, Natasha.
Hi, everyone.
It's also Natasha from Ready to Love. Go ahead and I'm sorry, I didn't even have none of you guys introduce yourselves. So I'll actually wait till we get our third or fourth person on, and then we'll introduce. But Natasha, I just asked everybody the first initial question. What does colorism look like to you?
Colorism, I think, is a bit of a myth, and it's kind of misconstrued. I think that colorism is when you have to me, it's a misconception, because I don't think a lot of people understand what it truly is. But I do recognize and feel that it's something that plagues the Black community specifically. I can't speak on other communities. And I think that it is something that should not, because there are misconceptions, I don't think that anyone should disregard it and ignore the fact that it is an issue within our community specifically, but then it is an issue that stems outside of our community, because everyone kind of has this misconception about what colorism is, what it means, and the stereotypes that truly affect our community as a whole.
Can you dive just a tad bit into the misconception that you mean?
Yeah, so I think that there are a lot of stereotypes, and like I said, we can't ignore that. And I do think that a lot of people don't understand where actually, I had a very interesting conversation when I was out on a date, and he kept kind of going in about where he gets his quote color from, and I didn't really understand that. And I think it was because he was a lighter complexion than his mom and his dad. So I think that there's something that is kind of ingrained in him from childhood, where he felt like he had to assign his complexion to someone in his family. So he kept saying oh, I get my color from my grandmother or something like that. So the first couple of times I was like, okay. And then by the fourth time, I was like, why do you keep saying that? You understand that's not how complexion works. Because I think that's what you mean when you say color, but complexion doesn't work that way. And I'm coming from my background where I have, my brother and sister are Bahamian, and all of their aunts and uncles come from the same two parents, and they're literally a melting pot of different shades of beautiful brown. I'm talking the lightest complexion to a darker brown complexion. And there's never been any kind of do they belong to those parents? So I think I understand a little bit more about that complexion can be lighter based upon, generations back, in the days. But because he kept bringing it up, I was like, I've had conversations with my friends about conversations that they've had on dates where men have said oh, my mama love you because you're light skinned, or, things like that. And I would be like, wait, what? He said that to you? It's okay, because he's not saying it in quote a negative way, because he's saying that you would fit what she likes. And I would just kind of dive in the conversation, but it would be third person because I wasn't there for it. So when I had that conversation with him, I was like, wait, is this that, that colorism kind of conversation that I've heard of, but I've never been involved in personally. So I kind of wanted to explore more to see what was going on with him. And I think that there is a lot of that that's ingrained in some of us, where because you are this shade, people can assume that you're treated a certain way, or because you're not this shade, people can assume that you're treated a certain way. And that's what I mean when I say that we can't ignore the fact that it's an issue like outside of the Black community, because there are stereotypes that are assigned. But I think that there are issues and, things that are misconceptions and things that should be addressed within our community, because I can say firsthand that people have said to me, you don't have to deal with that because you're light skinned, or because you could pass for this, or because, you're mixed or whatever. But I've also been present for my, friends that have darker complexion, that people have said like, oh, you pretty for a dark skinned girl, or things like that. So I've experienced it from both ends. So I recognize that it's an issue, and all of its misconceptions, because it don't mean nothing. The shade of your skin does not mean that you were raised in a certain area, or that you were afforded certain benefits or had certain benefits taken away from you. Because I've been followed around the store, and people think that I can go to the store. Oh, you don't have to experience that. I'm like, what? I just cussed a person out the other day in the store because of that. So I think that that's why, a lot of it is stereotypes from the outside and from within the community, and they both should be addressed. And this is just not a conversation that we have very often. I feel like I rambled, but I don't know if I answered the question. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. And we just wanted to understand what you meant by misconception. I'm going to put a pin on that right there. Let me bring this next guest up. Hey, Queen Shiba. Hello. We can't hear you, darling.
Oh, I was double muted. Happy Saturday, everybody.
Happy Saturday. So before I get everybody introduced, since I already did this backwards or whatnot, what is colorism to you?
Oh, wow. It's definitely a bias, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's an inconvenience within the African-American community. And the reason why I say an inconvenience, because there's a workaround, in my opinion, depending on the individual, right, that's up against it. Collectively, I think we all experience it, at some time or another. But when I say a workaround, it depends on the self-esteem, the confidence of the other person, and then all of those coping strategies, right, that we want to pick up as adults. And depending on your arsenal, what you have within your reach to be able to confront issues like that or inconveniences like that, it's definitely real, but it doesn't have to become a reality.
I like that. Okay. So since I did this backwards, I am so sorry because I'm just kind of excited.
Take your time.
I want to go around the room and let you ladies introduce yourselves before we get into the stories and everything. So we'll start up top with Camille. Please tell them where you're from, a little bit about yourself, or whatever you want to share with the audience.
My name is Camille, Dr. Camille Hazel, actually soon to be doctor. I'm just claiming it already because I'm like at the end and I'm about to defend. So I'm claiming it Dr. Camille Hazel because I've worked hard. I was on the Ready to Love DC, the wonderful DC cast. And yes, I am an educator working on my own business in education, arts education, and lifelong learner.
Seaway.
Hey guys, my name is Seaway. I am most of you guys probably know me from Little Black Books channel, Kojo's channel. So I'm often here on YouTube doing different types of reviews and panels in my free time. By trade, I am a lawyer. I do litigation in real estate law. That's my day job. And yeah, I'm from Chicago, and I'm excited to be talking about this topic.
Natasha.
Okay. Okay, I'm not muted. Hi, I'm Natasha. I too am a lawyer. My, I guess, handle, and some people literally call me this in lieu of calling me Natasha, but I'm a lit lawyer. I am a litigation lawyer as well, and I run my own firm in Florida. That is what I'm kind of forced to introduce myself as. When introducing yourself, people always want to put your profession with it, but I mean, through and through, I'm a Florida girl. I love the beach. And I think that this is important because of this discussion. So I am biracial. So my dad is white, my mom is Black. I was raised by my mom's family as a child. Me and my dad have an amazing relationship, but my grandparents are from Dothan, Alabama. So a lot of my friends, when they met my dad, they were confused. Like, wait, so that's your stepdaddy? Like, who is that? Because of the country roots. So I've been involved in a lot of debates about, like, well, you can't really speak on that because you're mixed, but I think that your upbringing is important. So I want to introduce that and share that as part of, my background and who I am, because it is who I am, and it doesn't affect like my experiences, which do sway, and that's what dictates what my opinions are. So that's me. Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you. And Queen.
All right. Well, I'm Queen Shiba. So I tend to kind of play around in these YouTube streets. I actually do a lot of reviewing of reality television, but I hone in on the psychological and the behavioral traits of the Black experience from a Black perspective, but also focusing on the dynamics of the behavior and the psychology piece. In my real life, I'm actually a product developer. I work for a global healthcare corporation. I'm a native Texan. And my background is in organizational psychology with a specific focus in behavioral modification. So, Camille, I most certainly understand the educational component. I stopped at my master's. I was just tired. I was like, I'm done. I got nothing left. I can't go past this. So, congratulations to you. Yeah.
And I want to say, first off, thank you all, ladies, for giving your time to this today. It was some time coming. I know we had a couple of weeks go past since we had the actual episode on Ready to Love. Oh Lord, I'm getting them all confused. Real Housewives of Potomac, where they mentioned colorism, but that wasn't the first, nor it's going to be the last show that we have ever seen colorism exist on TV. We know, Camille, we had it come up in your season. Natasha, some things came up with just you personally, as far as your hair texture and all that, which also plays into it a lot. We've seen it on Basketball Wives with OG and different various forms. And so that's why I brought you ladies together, so we could talk about how it affects us as a community when we continue to see this stereotype and stigma put on us on television, especially within our own groups, because most of these shows that we're watching are predominantly Black casted. So when we start seeing it and it plays out, it does affect us as the audience, regardless if it's happening in real life in your guys' time on TV, for those that have been on TV. And sometimes it's not even happening in that way. But the edit, by the time it gets down to editing, it gets down to a whole bunch of other factors that are put into it behind the scenes. When we see it as the audience, we project a lot of things that are happening into our lives, and we put it into those characters that we see on TV, and we go, yeah, that's that. Yes, this is this. And they're doing that, and because of this, and we start adding in the narrative a lot of times that are going on. So with that being said, Camille, I would like you to go ahead and share your story on your season per se.
Oh gosh, where do you want me to start? Like I said, I was on the DC season of Ready to Love. And honestly, on set, it was a wonderful experience for me. I saw the person that I connected with. We had mutually decided that we were not going to date anyone else. And we thought that our love story was going to be told in a way that we could walk away and be like, oh, we can show our kids. After seeing the after effect and seeing it on television, it did become something that I definitely am not, I was not happy with. I was extremely, extremely embarrassed. And then seeing the comments that went along with it, it was hurtful. It was extremely hurtful. I try to get an understanding of what happened, like what went wrong, and then, I'm a researcher by nature. So I'm on the internet trying to get a better understanding of just the media in general. And I was just like, wow, I understand that sometimes I did go off on the show, but we are missing a whole piece of why I went off, and so these certain stereotypes that we see in the media, I was like, well, I'm encompassing all of them. I'm a theater arts major. I've been on many stages. I've been in my younger days, I was on television as well. So for me, I'm very expressive. So if somebody talks, I'm going to make a face, and it's not a face where I'm being malicious or mean. It's just, I'm very expressive. Most Black women, you can tell what they're thinking when you look at their face. So for me, I make faces, and basically that was made to look like I am rolling my eyes and being catty towards a lot of the women. And to me, it looked like it was pitting the dark-skinned women against the light-skinned women on my season. Even so much so that, production gave us the brown girls because all three of us hung around. We went along with it. I didn't see it as anything being negative. I thought it was cute. I went along with it. I'm not going to say, oh, no, don't call us that. I loved it. And so as a result, it became something that was negative. Yeah. So, I mean, I was connected with Cornelius, and we're still together. But we also got called the dark skin couple on set. It was a lot of things that went on behind the scenes that you would not be able to see with the eye, and that is on purpose. That is on purpose. And I spoke out against it a couple of weeks ago when the Potomac thing came up, because I really believe that my experience was a result of colorism. Even a lot of the comments that I saw, it was just like, okay, there's no point in me doing an interview because you guys are not going to believe me anyway. And I thought a lot of that had to do with, you're going to listen to what everybody else has to say. And because, you don't believe me in the first place, I'm just going to go ahead and stay quiet. Now I think that I'm in a place of healing to where I am able to speak about some of the things. But again, I'm never the one to feel like I have to prove. I'm happy. I know what occurred behind the scenes. But like I said, a lot of it had to do with because I was very outspoken. I'm not going to date 10 people. I don't have to date 10 people, especially if we're not equally yoked. And because of that, I definitely got the short end of the stick.
If you ladies have any questions as well, you guys can jump right in and ask questions. I don't hold nobody hostage to just wait until their turn. But so production had placed that card on you guys for hanging around each other. Was I'm gonna be the devil's. Was it black, white? Who was the production?
So it is we believe it to be a Black show, right? Mm-hmm. The executive producer is not Black. The editors, I researched them. Again, I'm a researcher. They're not Black. So when they're editing it, they are crafting a story not based off the Black experience, but they are trying to entertain us. And again, I would much rather see a love story than the drama and the chaos. But again, they don't care about our love story. They don't care about the Black love story. So again, if you have somebody who makes faces, who's very outspoken, we're going to craft her as the angry Black woman. And, I filled that role.
Is it okay if I jump in?
Yes.
Now that I know that, wow. But I'm not shocked. But here's, before we get to the cast, there's people in the middle that are the face of Ready to Love, the promo, and not the cast. And I'm talking about Tommy, Will Packer. So the fact that now I'm thinking deeper, right? When I think about how I peel back the psychology behind it. So I'm listening to this and I'm like, well, damn. So that comes with a price. That's an exchange. You're profiting off of other people telling our stories, and you're actually standing in front of them as if to protect them, to say, this was my concept, this was my ideology. And that's not the case. So that's number one, very misleading. Number two, it tells me that We really can't attack issues when you have people in higher places that are receiving checks at the expense of others that are lower on the totem pole by way of cast members, if that makes any sense. Because a white person can't really write my story without a few of us volunteering to sign up. And I'm not talking about cast. I'm talking about the other two people I named. So I'm shocked that they didn't push back a little bit.
They're not, I mean, so I do feel like the executive producer is no longer the executive producer. I think that changed during Miami, if I am not mistaken. But where was I going with this? I'm sorry. What was your last thing that you said? Why did they push back? Oh, right. Why again, they want to get viewership. They want people to watch the show. So for them, they're not going to push back. Are you talking about Tommy and Will Packer? They're not in those rooms. They're the face, just like you said. They are the face for us to believe that it is a Black show. And it's on a Black network. So we believe that.
Well, we also got to remember that network is no longer totally Black owned anymore. So that's that too. Seaway, you look like you got some thoughts over there.
I mean, on this particular issue and what Camille went through, I mean, not a whole lot of thoughts. I mean, I'm not really surprised. The whole drama kind of seemed a bit contrived for me, from the beginning. So I'm not surprised that they were, reaching with it. I think a bit of it just got carried away. I can definitely see how it started as like an uplifting brown skinned women and who just happened to be friends together. I see that's how it started, but then I think it went left when those same women were either portrayed as or actively doing stuff, like with the Dante, I'm forgetting her name, but with the hand and the finger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like that wasn't the best scene, and you only have to give them a little bit, you give them a little bit of aggression and then that's all, then the whole crew is aggressive and it's unfortunate because like we see on Potomac, whenever we get there, one group can do a whole bunch of things and it's not aggressive. Ashley can do 10 billion things. It's never aggressive. And then as soon as if Wendy does something, it would be completely aggressive, so it's definitely not fair.
And even the table scene, that's how I got my label as being the aggressive one, how that was chopped and screwed. And I got tired of trying to explain it. Like, again, if you tell a Black woman you're going to fight them, I don't know any black woman that I know is not just going to sit there and be like, oh, okay. They're going to be like, you're going to do what? And again, you did not see that because it was in the wrong context. And I am constantly having to defend myself that I was going to fight women because they were going to vote somebody off who they didn't even end up voting off. But again, with the cuts and chops and screws on the show, it seemed like Cornelius got voted off. Again, those that were there, they know, it's producers have apologized, but it's just like what's out there is out there. I am basically going to have to live with this for the rest of my life. And life goes on. I think my real life definitely speaks to the person that I am, but it just sucks. Like, this is how I got portrayed.
And I don't think it's your fault. I think everyone by now, I think if you go on Ready to Love Now, I'm sure Natasha can speak to this, but I mean, personally, I wouldn't go on there because I don't trust the way they edit. I mean, there was a time where people were blaming the editors for X, Y, and Z, and they really were doing things. But Ready to Love is notorious for actually chopping and screwing different scenes or different conversations or confessionals about different people and putting it. And that to me is like editing gone too far. I think we need to be able to have a real understanding of what was happening. And I think the producers and editors in Ready to Love are just not fair, And it's scary, as a professional to go on there and have them cut and splice certain situations to make things look more aggressive than what they are. Then you have to live after that. You have to interact. So I think it's a reality TV thing. And it also, I do think it is a colorism thing. And it's also like I need a villain thing. So it's like, if you happen to be all of those things, it's bad luck.
I didn't have to be the villain. Literally, I want to say majority of people walked off thinking it was going to be somebody else. So that is where the whole colorism thing came into play.
Right.
Natasha, you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so he did, the executive producer you're talking about, he left after my season. And I think just to speak on the editing part of it, so spoiler alert, I didn't last long, and I am very firm in my belief that everything happens for a reason. So I didn't feel away then, but then so I stayed in touch with people from the show, so I knew enough of what was going on, and I was like, oh, thank God, I got sent home. Like, I was like, oh, yes, because I have a real life, I have a real career, and my reputation is worth way more than anything could have come from this show, especially once I saw that my man wasn't there. So, there's some more things that will come out during the reunion, which is, just a few episodes away now. But so I won't get into that. But there was even like a little part that it wasn't a big deal for me, but I was like, I didn't say that right after that. So it's like they literally will chop like half of a sentence and put it with another sentence and put like a B-roll on it, so you can't see that there's like a switch in your movement. So I will say that like your season, Camille, like watching it and then knowing what I know now, I know how that can happen, because even during the reunion, when it was like, oh well, I didn't say that, and it was like, well, didn't she say that? But it's like, now it's like I know this, like, yeah, I said it at some point, but I didn't say it in response to that. And I do think that so early on, probably like right after I went home, one of my castmates kind of brought to my attention that the show was originally designed to be a dating show for successful 30s and 40-year-old, Black men and women from the male perspective. And I know this topic is about colorism, but I think that that's one of the main things that I just kind of like, it kind of ruined it for me with the show, because they protect the image and the men and everything just so like that's their main focus. But the women, it's like, someone actually pointed out to me the other day, they were like, have you noticed that from our season they send the women home in a group and the men are always like one-on-one? So it's like they get to do their walk of shame just like in more private, but the women have to do it like in front of the whole cast. So I think that it's definitely motivated by different things, and it frustrates me that the people that understand the Black experience are not the ones making the decisions about how Black men and women are portrayed, because they will push forward the guy with like a bunch of kids and a bunch of drama behind him as the main person to go on all the dates and meet all the women. And someone said to me, they were like, it seems like they portray like, as a Black woman, no matter how successful, no matter how beautiful you are, like these are the Black men you have to choose from. And that's just not the truth. Like, I'm still single. I haven't found my man yet, but I know that there are good men out there. Like, I'm not, saying that. But I do think that it was motivated by other things. And, I think that I'm basing what I know, like my own experience, on like what those factors were. So I can't say that, they weren't motivated by wanting to portray you as the angry Black woman because of your complexion. Like you have that experience as, a Black woman in that experience, but also because the varying complexions there. So I think that it's hard for, after being in the situation and realizing like those outside opinions, like respectfully, like you just kind of don't know, because it's really hard to like put someone in that situation to understand why you think that that was part of what was factored in.
I'm sorry, I had to address a troll up in the chat real quick. But they like to come, they see the title and they want to come place their history up in here. But this is Black women talking right now. Okay, so this is our experience. And so we're not going to get into y'all manufactured history right now, because if we want to go there, we can go there. All right, because history has been told to hit from people who supposedly won the factors to write these history books, but that's not the truth. Okay, we just want to know that a lot of times when people have the money and the audience, that they can change perspectives the way they want, and television has helped do that. That's why we are having this conversation right now, because television has put certain people in the forefront to make y'all feel comfortable enough to come up into this chat and say these things that you're saying right now. So don't get it confused, sweetheart. That's why you fear us so much and you want to put us in the background, because the history has determined on Black women as being the true and natural woman to be able to produce and reproduce any other color by the same husband, by the same man. Okay. And if y'all don't know, that's why me and Natasha sitting up here, coming from a very diverse community and our household or whatnot, because I do too have sisters that are Camille's color. My brother is my color. My other brother is in between. Okay. We come from different shades. My family comes from all kind of shades and hues in this, our lineage, our single lineage alone. We did not mix with anybody recently. Okay, this has been happening since the beginning of time. Black women have been producing different race babies. That's why you exist. So if you want to play over here, do your history first before you come trolling and find out your mama is Black. All right. Anyway, sorry, y'all. Sorry. We're going to get back on it. But so we do know, and I'm sorry, Empress, I wanted to address your thing. So she had a question or so saying that we're making excuses for our behaviors instead of taking accountability. But I'm trying to get down to whose particular behavior are we making excuses, because we can't speak on those that are not here on this panel right now.
I think she was talking to Camille. So those are some of the Palace members.
Yeah, I know. I've seen their names in your thing because I've been in your chat a couple of times.
Yeah, I think she was talking to Camille.
Yeah, she's talking to me. And again, it's not making excuses. Again, I think that this was supposed to be a platform to definitely talk about my experience that you all did not see, and understanding some of the things that went on behind stage. Like I said, I did not like my appearance on the camera. So I want that to be very clear. This is definitely not about making excuses, but to talk about my experience.
Okay, so I'm not about to address you, troll, right now. I got you, Camille. Okay, because you want to talk about the happiest places. All right, we are not in Disneyland, baby. Okay.
I always tell them, come up and cam up, turn on your camera and come up, and then they magically disappear.
Yeah, if they want to come up, they want to come up. Go ahead, 90210, because you're around the corner, baby. You can come see me. We close, so we close. All right. I drop you the link if you want to come in, but sweetheart, if you have to deal with sunscreen, baby, you're hurting. Okay, I'm gonna let you know. But back to what we was talking about. So as far as the media goes, and I know that these shows is going to push their agendas. When they do this, and now you are the token person that they put forth to be the bad guy, the villain, the stereotype. How does that affect you going forth in your day-to-day with regular people that see you and I remember you on TV? And does they okay, especially for you, Camille, because we know with the stereotype of being darker skinned, they apply that you're aggressive, you're negative, you're this and that. If we look at the definition of Black and it's always negative, it's dark, a black hole. And so the darker your skin is perceived through those notions, you are the most negative, the most hated, the most, fear. I'm not going to say fear. Well, you are feared. That's why they project so much. But you are just this black hole, this epitome of evil. How does that affect you day to day?
So I think in my benefit, I grew up in California, Southern California. So for me, my mother had already instilled in me that, the world is going to come for you. She said, despite it, you are beautiful, you are bold, you are Black. So I never had an issue with my color. I always looked at myself, because I was affirmed at home, me going out in the world, they couldn't tell me anything. Even going into high school, I got crowned homecoming. So for me, I've always thought I was beautiful, and not beautiful for dark-skinned women. I was just beautiful. Going to Howard further affirmed that. So coming on this show, it was a small increment of my life. In the moment, it hurt because everything that I was taught and what is instilled in me became twisted for a moment. People come up to me now, I don't get the negative comments. If anything, they're like, "Oh, you were extra," or I even get people saying, "I understood why that's your man and you fought for him." I take it all with a grain of salt, understanding that for me, I played a character. That's what, in my mind, I played a character, a negative character that definitely was full of stereotypes. But like I said, I think my real life and my everyday life speaks to the other side of that. I'm a mentor. I mentor young Black women of all shades. And it's something that I've always preached. No matter what your shade is, you are beautiful. So again, seeing what I saw on television, it was a gut punch. It definitely was. But again, my background and how I was raised, it helped me get through what I went through.
And Natasha, as far as you being mixed, as you have stated, how has your time on the show affected you coming off of the show?
I don't think anybody remembers me, but I mean, I was on there for like 10 seconds. And my season is still on. So, I mean, we'll see what happens after the reunion. I really just hope to just fly under the radar because, like I said, I got real life, real career, real stuff going on. I will say that, anyone that has said something that I didn't already know, it's mainly been like about the hair or something like that. I mean, I really didn't dive into the blogs and the comments and stuff, so I just don't really know what was circulating. So some of the previous castmates were like, people are going to walk up to you in the grocery store and stuff like that, but I don't really go to the grocery store that much. I mainly order my food, and there have been times when I've been back home and I've been forced to go to Walmart, which, no disrespect, I just personally don't like Walmart. But I've gone in and I just wasn't in the mood to have a conversation. So I don't really know why I did it, but I just told them that I wasn't who I was. And so I am perfectly fine with just, being dismissive of stuff like that. If, anything comes out after the reunion and people are having negative things to say, or that kind of I'm not a villain, but we never know. It's like a mystery to us too. So if something does come out and there is negativity or people are approaching me, then I will be quick to be like, oh no, I don't know who she is. But doppelganger. I just don't have time for it.
And Seaway and Queen Shiba, can you give me a little bit of background of your family history, if you guys are coming from mixed race or just two-parent Black households? Or you're on mute, Queen.
Okay, sorry about that. My grandfather, which is my mom's dad, was from Honduras, but a darker skinned Latin person, right? And then my grandmother was from New Orleans. And I never knew that. And I knew I used to my friend group has been very, very diverse. But that, now that I know what I know, to me, that explains like my choice of a mate, right? And also just being diverse at a very, very, very young age. I didn't know my skin tone was a problem until I heard it from a little Black boy that called me Black Jesus in school. Right. And that was my nickname, Black Jesus. And it just took off. And he was darker than me. That was the crazy part. But he would pick on me. And I don't know if my lighting makes me look lighter. Me and Camille are probably about the same skin tone. Right. But I would also hear, you are really pretty for a little Black girl, from elderly Black women. Right. And I don't know, I didn't know what that meant, as a little girl, but as I came into my own, I'm like, oh, darker people are not supposed to be attractive, coming, with some of these personalities and ideology, from back in the day. We were not deemed maybe the primary pick, but I pushed through that. And the reason why I feel like I was able to push through that, I've never heard my mom say anything negative about anybody that I can remember. Like, my mom has never instilled any type of inferiority in me as a little girl. I don't ever remember her telling me I couldn't do something because I was a girl. So I grew up with a level of confidence that's probably uncommon, if that makes any sense. Also, I believe that my being involved in sports as a teenager helps you to push through hard moments. I played volleyball in college, and having like a sisterhood from a very young age when you get introduced. And I think sometimes girls don't get introduced to many things outside of their looks. Think about the toys that we buy them. The first thing you do with a little baby is hand her another little baby. When you think about go get your baby, put your baby in the stroller, go feed your baby. So in some ways, I think we create our own crazy, right? If we start talking about colorism, sexism, gender biases, we are just pounding it on top of them from childhood. And then we expect them to have the coping skills. But this is what you kind of placed in front of me. And now as an adult, I'm having to navigate this negativity around me, So for me, I think it's important that all of us understand when people label you, stop them in a moment. I don't care where you are. If you're in a meeting and you hear somebody say, well, it sounds like you're frustrated. No, I'm not frustrated. So let me give that back to you, because that doesn't belong to me. Or it sounds like no, that's not what I'm feeling. That's not who I am. So I said all of that to say, don't let people drop labels on you like sticky notes and walk away throughout your encounters. Because if you don't give that crap back to them, like 20, 30 years, like it depends on when your first encounter, years from now, you're just a thing of labels and things that other people have said and written for you. That's not even your life. So that's kind of a little bit of what I have to offer to the conversation by way of that.
Can I just add that I wrote a list of all the favorite things from 2022 that my therapist said, and that doesn't belong to me, and your words have value were at the top of the list. So just had to further underscore those two things.
I like that. I was thinking of something like that earlier. Seaway, before we segue into some real topics of trying to resolve this.
Yeah, so I have an interesting background. Both of my parents, I identify as Black American experience, but I'm pretty much half Cuban, so Afro-Cuban on my mother's side, and regular American Black on my dad's side. But both of my grandmother on my mother's side pretty much looked white, as she may have had an eighth of Black in her, but she looked white. She raised me. She had straight hair. And I remember growing up crying, trying to figure out why my hair wasn't straight like hers. I really didn't understand that. That was an interesting concept. And she died when I was a freshman. So that was weird, because people always would ask me, why do you have a white grandma? So that would be very interesting. And then on my dad's side, my grandfather's mother was also white. So I can't say I can't point to white people in my family, because I can. I'm not sure I'm super happy about that, but I can. But what I'll say is I really want to be a part of this conversation, because I think it's weird when you're in the middle or the lighter middle. You have a very interesting experience with colorism, and that I didn't experience anything on either side. In the Black community, no one ever said the things that I saw being said to people who are biracial or super light, like you're not Black. And no one's ever made any comments about my skin color my entire life. It's almost like you just exist. You float, and you're able to kind of see both sides and see what other people experience. Where I've actually experienced colorism is when I'm dealing with the Spanish community, and I speak Spanish. My brother speaks Spanish. My mother speaks Spanish. But when I'm in Chicago, because you're either Mexican, Black, or white here, I'm never ever treated or allowed to be a part of that community. Only time I've ever felt included was when I'm in New York, or when I'm in Cuba, or when I'm in the Dominican Republic or someplace like that. But in Chicago, I have never been allowed to be a part of that community. So that's where I really experienced it. I think it's very discriminatory. If you're not, very light or look white or look Mexican, you're not allowed to be a part of that community. But as far as like the Black community, I felt absolutely nothing. And that's why I thought, the Potomac, I was really able to understand where the disconnect was with Ashley and Giselle. Well, I think Giselle was actually trying not to understand. And then I was able to understand what Candace and Wendy to agree were trying to say. So it's been an interesting experience.
Thank you. It's a good experience to know that, these different shades do feel it. I know me and Camille had talked in the background quite a bit, and I had expressed to her that I don't like to call what I gone through reverse colorism. I don't like to say it like that. And I've gotten it. So my background is both of my parents are Black. My mother's family is by way of the Midwest, which are Indian. So my grandmother's mother was half Indian and half Black. And my grandmother is darker skinned, nice, full of Indian features, which means the broader nose, and all of these things. My grandfather on my dad's side, my dad's side of the family is from New Orleans. So there's diversity within that, of course. Somewhere down the line, we probably have white and history. I'm probably saying it wrong, but I haven't found it yet or whatever, other than that. A lot of my last name comes from a European country, as well as Haitian. It's part Haitian. So we do have a diversity in our group. Every part of my dad's siblings are different shades. Every last one of them are different shades. Both of them, all of them come from the same parents, except for the last two and the very first one. However, my side, from my mother's side, which is I call the lighter side of the family, they were the ones pushing me out when I was younger to say, you need more sun, you need more color, you need more things. So I grew not liking my skin tone and favoring darker skin tone because that's what I was taught. Because I thought something was wrong with me because they were always pushing me out into the sun, telling me I need more color, you need this and that and the third. Now, I've always been the lighter, probably out of all of my family members for the majority part. I was Casper when it was growing up in the pictures and stuff. And some of them do kind of look like it. There's a blurry little white thing with some eyes. So it kind of looked like it. I don't know if people was just terrible at taking pictures or it was lighting. But, I was different things. I was always light bright. I was Casper. I was anything that had to deal with white. I had a grade when I had my daughter. We had to go through that whole thing because my sisters, like I said, are Queen's complexion and Camille's. My daddy doesn't have a strong gene as far as color is evolved. So whatever the mother's complexion is, the children tend to come out like that. So my sisters have a different mother, which is from Belizean background. I grew up with them. I'm the lightest of all of them. So I didn't get it from them either. I didn't feel it. At least I didn't feel it. If they did feel a certain type of way, I didn't feel it. Because if you know Belize has Spanish within different parts of their community as well. So you get different colors from there as well. I didn't feel it from them. I mostly felt it from my mother's side, which is predominantly my shade. They're all pretty much my shade, or probably a little bit darker. So for me, it was on the opposite spectrum of feeling I'm too light. Not seeing so much of the privilege in it. I felt like more so Malcolm X's mother, where I wanted a darker man. I wanted, darker people around me. I wanted to be, because to me, it felt like, oh, you're light, so you're white in a way. And I didn't like that because I know both of my parents are Black. Now, not to dismiss from anybody who might be in my family that might be white. or whatnot, I just resonated with the Black side of my family a lot more. I appreciated them a lot more. They took me in, they love me. My dad's side of the family are different colors. They never, I'm like Queen Shiba, they never made me feel some type of way about my complexion. They love me for me. They've always instilled in me, love yourself. I had to sit in the mirror for a long time to get to know myself, to really appreciate, because my light skinnedness came with different things. Certain features, my lips are full. I have hips. I have butt. So when I went into modeling, there was a lot of things that I was shamed upon. I was disqualified for because I had Black features underneath the light skin. So it didn't matter how light I was sometimes. My privilege didn't work. And yes, I say my privilege because light skin is supposed to be a privilege amongst it. But at the same time, I understood why light skin exists within a lot of our community. It was a survival mechanism from our history in a Black America. Some of our parents looked at themselves in a negative light and didn't like their skin color because it was a form of, I'm going to be tortured, I'm going to be abused, I'm going to be slaved, I'm going to be sold, I'm going to be different things, and I don't want that for my kids. So they did seek out lighter shades to mate with. And then you had the darker ones that, the lighter ones that hated themselves for being so light. And so when I spoke to my grandmother, who was, like I said, a darker shade person, I heard a lot of self-hate within her. And that hurt me because to me, she was the most beautiful person I've ever seen. And she had a lot of self-hate because of her complexion. And she was to say her sisters are not that much lighter than her, but she'll go, my mama had to go find the darkest man to go and have me. And it was like, sweetie, you're beautiful though. Your features, everything about you is beautiful. And so every man that my grandmother, I knew she was with, was lighter. My grandfather was a lighter man. The next man that she married after him was a very light to almost white man. So all of this, I say this all to say that a lot of the colorism that we are still spewing at each other comes from outside race to make us hate ourselves so we can fight amongst ourselves, instead of fighting against everything else that we have going on in the world. They don't have to sit here and come at us with anything because we're steady coming at ourselves, and that we need to stop. And I was on Queen Shiba's page a couple of weeks ago, and she was having this talk, and that's why I had brought her up here, because I love the way she moderated and she addressed all the issues, because all of those women were on stage. Nobody fought, nobody bickered, everybody sat and listened to each other's story. And I thought that was a beautiful start to continue with this conversation, to say that we don't have to keep fighting each other for our skin tone. There's so many other reasons why we don't have to get along with each other, but let the skin tone be the last reason. We have to stop looking at that person's skin tone and say, oh, you have a privilege. And I'm not saying it don't exist, but I'm saying is we don't have to keep doing that to each other. We don't have to sit there and say, oh, you're darker, so you must be this way. Because if I put it me and the one other Black person that was at my job at the time, I feel like I was probably more meaner than her, to be honest. Like, I'm more standoffish than she was. And it would puzzle me when they'd be like, oh, you're not so nice. Oh, you're not this. It's like, why? Because I'm light skinned, I'm supposed to be nice. I'm tolerable. That's what I am. I'm tolerable to you because I'm light skinned. Because you assume that I'm supposed to be nicer and I'm supposed to be more dormant, I'm supposed to be more like docile in this because of my shade, not because of my personality. So I just feel like us as Black women, if we stop hating on each other for our outer appearance, and we start getting to each other and loving on each other and being able to say, you know what, no matter what you look like as far as your skin tone is concerned, you're a beautiful woman. You're my sister. I love you. We can start fighting all the battles that we need to fight when we need to fight them. Because all of these communities come to us when they want us to fight their battles. Feminism comes to us. LGBT community, they come to us. We don't come to each other for anything. And so if we can start coming to each other to fight colorism first, then we can get on to these other little things that they hide under colorism, which is a featureism, the hair texture, the this, that, and the third, you know. And last point before, because I know I'm rambling now, but Queen Shiba on her thing, somebody had bridging out Euro, and somebody in the chat just mentioned out Euro features. Well, baby, Euro features come from Africa still, because if you want to know, certain parts of Africa have broader nose and other parts have more narrow nose. That was all survival mechanisms so you can learn how to breathe in different climates. Your skin tone is different mechanisms so you can be able to adapt to the sun, that when you didn't have shade. If you know your history of how this all evolved, you would know, like I said from the jump, you derive from a Black woman some way, somehow. She has learned to evolve in whatever land you put her in. And as much as you guys want to sit here and hate on us and put us at the bottom of the totem pole, it's a reason for it. Because if we stop fighting each other and actually come together as one, we're going to be back in our rightful place, which is on top. And I know none of y'all want that. But that's what we're here to do. And that's what we're going to do. That's why we've been so resilient. That's why you can't get rid of us. That's why y'all love to sit there and call us the roach of the earth. Because no matter what you do to us, we're going to stay on resilient. We're going to keep moving. And we're going to keep thriving through this, because without us, no one exists. Period. I'll land my plane right there because I've been on a good one for a second. Oh, no, don't leave me quiet, y'all. Y'all go ahead and jump in.
That was beautiful. That was divine. Thank you for that. I think another thing that we're plagued with is the strong woman title, which dismisses me from having a moment of vulnerability. Oh, you're strong. I don't want to be strong. I just want to be a woman that's having a moment. I just want to be a woman that is crying. I want to be a woman that is allowed to feel, to think, to express herself. So I think in addition to colorism, there's so many things I feel like as Black women that we're up against. And it's just so much. That's why I pause and I advocate. And I'm all about the women, right? I'm all about the women because I understand what we're up against. I understand the different battles and challenges that we have to fight, endure as a collective and also individually. Because once you're done with the colorism, it's like, okay, now I gotta prove to you I'm not as intimidating as you think I am because I appear to be strong, but I'll pause for the other panelists to get in.
That was something, I don't know if you watched The Perfect Match. If you didn't, it's a foolish show on Netflix, but there's this guy, Dom, and as soon as Colony, which no lie, Colony from Selling Tampa is probably one of the most beautiful people I've ever seen. And as soon as she got on the show, Dom, who was dating all these white women, never said anything about strong or whatever. As soon as Colony got on the show, you a strong Black woman. You could take care of me and all this type of other stuff. And people called him out about it. It was like, why all the white women got a chance to be feminine and taken care of and gentle and delicate. And as soon as Colony got on the show, you start calling her strong Black woman and you could take care of me. Very, very, very disturbing. But I think I want to make sure, I know we'll probably get there, but it's not missed. But I think the thing about colorism is that it's all a part of this system in America and all over the world. Colorism is in India. It's in lots of different places of the big structure of systematic, racism. And what disturbed me the most about the conversation in Potomac and even out of TV is that a lot of Black people's inability to see colorism as a systematic construct, but yet we want white people to see racism as a construct. And that was why I wanted to be on here, because it baffled me why it was so confusing for the folks on Potomac to understand how they could be getting benefits of colorism, even if they're not colorists, right? On being on the show. but then yet they want, white people to acknowledge racism. And I thought that's so strange, because if we know that racism exists in America, then we should know that proximity to whiteness would also reap benefits. Now, to Jay's point, I do think there's nuances. There's texturism and there's featureism. And you can be of darker skin and still have fine features and get benefits. You can be of darker skin and have wavier textured hair and also get benefits. That's also part of proximity to whiteness. And you could be lighter skin if you have full lips and kinkier hair. You may not see any of those benefits because of those features maybe overriding whatever color you have. And so that's a part of it, right? So we can't rule out the nuances of it all. But I just find it odd that just the idea of this construct and how, if you're of a lighter hue, you may have this subconscious benefits, like being viewed as not aggressive versus another party being viewed as aggressive, or getting multiple chances to stay on the show versus other parties being kicked off, or that I don't like you for no reason, like how a lot of them don't like Wendy and they can't point to a reason why. They can't even pinpoint a reason why. I think we have to break that down. I think a lot of people don't want to be colorists, yet a lot of their actions in the system that they benefit from is in fact colorism. And I hope these type of conversations moves the needle forward, and even some of the name calling and nitpicking that lighter skinned people feel, a lot of that time is from pain of darker skinned people being all a part of the same system. So it's all this. That's not to say, right, like lighter skinned people are discriminated against or aren't treated bad or aren't kind of name called and things like that. But a lot of the time, it's like when you pick on pretty people that you like, or you pick on, like when the boy picks on the girl that he actually likes, a lot of times people are picking on people because they're seeing something that's reminding them of what makes them feel bad, So it's all a part of the same system. And I think, we have to talk about it. It can't be ignored at all.
So here we go. Let's go get on it. So now we into it for real.
Okay. So I want to jump in because that's part of what I said earlier, when I feel like it's a myth because it's not based on anything. It's not real. Like, there is nothing that you can scientifically say that a person, because they are this complexion, that they are this, that they are angrier, or they are whatever. It can be a flavor type thing. I personally am attracted to dark-skinned men. That's my preference. It's not because they're, I think that dark-skinned men are this or dark-skinned men are that. It's because that physically they look more attractive to me. However, this myth has become fact because people are literally like basing things on it. So that's why we can't ignore it. Like, we can't ignore that it's not real. One thing I learned from protesting is what it truly means to be an ally. So when white people would come and they would protest with us, I just thought like, okay, they're down for the cause. But no, there literally are meetings with them because you have, in order to be a part of this, you have to understand that you have privilege. Because we see on social media, or maybe you had a conversation with someone at work and they'd be like, oh, I don't see color. Well, what's wrong with you? Like, are you blind? Because that's like unrealistic. We can see the shade of a person or see, sometimes what race a person is. But so you can't say like, oh, I don't see color. Like, it may not be a factor for you. That's fine. But you can't say that you don't see it. So people who are truly an ally, they recognize that because my skin is white, I have a privilege, so I need to be like play this role for this purpose. So when we protest, just to further like lay out that as an example, they are the ones that go up front when it's time to get arrested. They go stand up front because they are asserting and utilizing that privilege for that purpose. They're like protecting us in a sense. So when it comes to colorism and within the Black community, I probably was blind to it for a long time because my best friend is Camille's complexion, and I've never heard anyone say to her like, oh, you're pretty for a dark-skinned girl. Like, she just pretty. Like, I never experienced that. But a lot of it, I mean, maybe it has to do with classism, you know, like for her background or whatever. There's just so many other factors that come in, but I didn't know. And when like I said, I'm attracted to darker skinned men. So I didn't, you know, really personally see that. However, once you become aware of it, I can't just still be like, oh, no, it doesn't exist. Oh, it's not a thing. No, I do know it, and I do know it to be real because I've seen it happen, not necessarily to me in that same sense, but I've seen it happen around me. So you can't just turn a blind eye and be like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about because I ain't never experienced that. But I mean, open your eyes. Like, even if you haven't experienced it in your small little bubble of your life, you've experienced it through social media, through videos. Like, do you think this stuff is not real? Like, you can see it with your own eyes. So these conversations absolutely are important, and they absolutely do play a part, because once you start talking, now each of us will go and have further conversations with other people. The people who are commenting and watching, they will have conversations with other people. And that's part of what it is about, to have the conversation. Because I recognize that when I go to various countries, I kind of blend in. So I completely understood what you were saying, Steve. Like, you just kind of are in the middle where, you know, no one really said anything negative about me, about my skin being lighter from my family, even though I was lighter. I didn't know it was a thing until I started branching out and going to other places. And then it became a thing through other people or directly to me as time went on. But I recognize that that is a privilege in sometimes I don't have that privilege, but in environments where I do, I cannot just say, oh, but because I deal with this in other places, it's not truly a privilege, or it's not recognized as this, or this doesn't exist. I think it's a myth because it's BS, but it is real life for us, and it's real life because of the outside, you know, the people outside of the Black community. Those influences have literally brainwashed us generations before us, and we have to stop it, have a conversation about it so that it doesn't pass on through our children and the legacies that we leave. And I'll stop there.
I just have one just thought-provoking comment. Natasha, I'm not trying to single you out, because I also think a lot of us are like that, me included to a degree. And I want Queen and maybe the other panelists, y'all opinion on this. But I hear a lot of times that Black women and women in general, but a lot of white women, say they're attracted to dark-skinned men and it's just a preference. But I find preference issues to be really interesting. And I know we call out Black men's preference a lot of times, that they only date white women as being more than a preference. But I think, because I've done a lot of thinking on this, because I've heard this a lot, that our attraction towards dark-skinned men is not just a preference. And I think it loops into the bigger system of why sometimes dark-skinned women are discriminated against for another reason. And I'll explain. Our preference for dark-skinned men is often because we view dark-skinned men as more masculine. They're more protectors. They're just more attractive. But we don't sit down and think, why are we more attracted to them? And I think the opposite, we have the opposite effect for dark-skinned women. Dark-skinned women then will also be viewed as more aggressive, more masculine, more this and that. And I think it has a dual effect. I'm not saying that we can't just have dark-skinned men as our preference, but I think I'm also seeing that light-skinned men on the other side are viewed as weaker, not as masculine, all of those things. And I know Black women, we get away with saying, I just like my dark-skinned man, and there's that, you know. But I think there's a duality to it, because I see a lot of dark-skinned men, they want lighter-skinned women. Well, why is that? Some of it could be the whitewashing, or trying to wash your genetic pool to have lighter kids. That's happened all throughout history. But I think a lot of it is that light-skinned women are viewed as more feminine, more dainty, closer to white. So I would like people's opinion, but I just hear that all the time. And I have to look at my own attraction, because I started to view, like, why do I like this dark-skinned man, but like Drake is viewed as weak, a crybaby, this and that, you know, but then we view this, you know, it's just an interesting kind of deprogramming, because I think preferences are never just preferences. So even with my own self, that's what I'm saying, not just you, Natasha, but even with my own self, it's an interesting concept.
No, I think that's fair. And I think that it was good to highlight like the duality of it, because a lot of times we think of it the way, like the reason why we do, I just really like the way chocolate skin look. It just looked good to me. But I think that what you're saying is absolutely right. And that's going to make me explore myself a little bit more as well, because it's the same thing with height. So yeah, why don't women typically like shorter men? Because we are attracted to, taller and maybe like the more masculine man. I know I do like me a good masculine man. So that very much well could be a part that's ingrained into that preference that I haven't broken down and recognized for that purpose. But I don't think that it's the same as men who say that they like white women. I think that is a difference. But I also can't ignore the fact that, yeah, oftentimes people that don't know what I do for a living think that they might be attracted to me because I'm light skinned. So they think I'm going to be more feminine. And then they're not, because they see that I'm not, right off the rip, like, oh, you're a lawyer. Or I mean, like, you like to argue. So those stereotypes come into play and they kind of like overlap and kind of fight with each other. So it's like, it becomes like shucks, that changes my opinion versus coming in and getting to know the person. But as far as like what you said about those preferences not truly meaning that, like, maybe they don't, and maybe that's something that I need to explore, because I think that it can very well be a duality effect, where for some people this and for some people that, or within ourselves it could be, both at the same time. I'll tell you that my preference came because I had a dream and I met my daughter in my dream, and she was this cute like milk chocolate little girl with curly hair, and that's why I would date light skinned guys, and I'd be like, well, you can't make the daughter that I seen in my dream, I don't think so. That's kind of, I don't know. That's just my preference. But I've dated short, tall, light, dark, but I still feel like if you put men in a book and I don't know anything about them and it's just off of like physical appearance, I naturally am attracted to like the darker male. So now I'm going to go, thanks a lot. Like now I got to go dig and think about this. So
I'm sorry for confusing your life.
Because I got things to do today. Okay.
No, go ahead, Queen Shiba, before we go and address the rest of it.
I'll answer your question about preference, but then when we come back, I wanted to say something earlier about Wendy and not Wendy, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, Candace, and the comment that she made to Giselle, but I'll table that for now. So preference, yeah, I definitely had a preference when I was younger toward darker men. But when I got involved in college and I diversified like my social circle, what I realized is I just like masculine men. So when initially that was specific to dark skinned Black men, right? But then I also like Middle Eastern men, their poise, their energy, their presence. When we think about machismoism, masculinity, and also cowboys. And what I mean now, Camille, not dating, but just that like cowboys and the farms and the land and the oil and just what they represent and the persona. Camille was like, oh, hell no, when I said cowboys. But and what I realized is like when I was looking at it from one spectrum, it was a dark man because I was just looking at Black men. But when I really peeled it back and I thought, well, what does that mean to you? The question you posed to us, what if you really took a look at that? Is that really his skin tone? Is that his persona? What is it that makes you say a darker man? And that's why I gave you all examples of me just liking men and the kind of man I like, whether he's dark or not. And that's why I said Middle Eastern. I've never dated a Middle Eastern man, by the way, but I'm just saying men that will make me go, like, wow, what energy was that? That felt, wow, I kind of like that, So that's it. I never share my personal life normally because I do reviews, but that's, you ask, so I'm sharing.
Camille, you have a preference before we jump back into the...
Do I have a preference?
No, I was saying, Camille, no, I know.
I just like attractive men, period. I don't have a preference, but I can say that growing up, I used to purposely date dark-skinned men because I would run into those that would say, oh, we can't date because we're both dark-skinned, and if we ever have a baby, our baby is going to be dark. And obviously, that wasn't the type of man that I needed. But I don't have a preference. Like I said, I love attractive successful, of course, good credit. Yes.
She said that credit make you look sexy, baby. Oh, okay. As far as me, you guys kind of know. I already told you I had a complex, so I didn't like my complexion as much. But I have dated across the board. I'm not going to play with it. I have dated different shades. I've dated different outside of my community a couple of times, just to try it out to see if I liked it or not. But I end up finding over time the people who like me back the most were darker shade men. Now it's not that much hard to be darker than me, but they were darker complected men. So I tend to gravitate to those a bit more, but I'm more of an energy, a vibe person. So I'm a psychosexual as well. So if you talk to me a certain way, if you give me certain conversation, you give me certain energy, I will gravitate to you. I just found that, over my course and looking back at my history, most of the men I have dated have been of darker hue, and they're fine. So I'm like Camille too. I like them to be fine, whatever they is. But I've been with light skinned men, green eyes. I've been with a white man before. So it's not that I have not. She said, I ain't crossed that border yet. But he gave me energy. He gave me black energy. He still had that. It wasn't just, total. I haven't gone total surfboard white yet, but maybe one day if I don't get married soon. No, let me stop. Let me stop. So I know I feel like Queen is going to address the kind of thing with Candace that I had in my head as well, as far as things that Candace says. So I'll let Queen address that, and then we'll jump back into how Seaway segued this piece open, and because I don't want to keep everybody too long. I know Kimel is trying to celebrate her birthday weekend, and we appreciate Cornelius for lending her to us if he in the background listening. Thank you. Go ahead, Queen.
Yes. So listen, I'm not holding back when it comes to Candace. Candace is not a victim. Candace is a willing participant, and she goes toe to toe, and she willingly engages in mutual combat, right? And sometimes she's not in the favorite circle, right? But Candace is smart enough and savvy enough to play different cards when she needs to. Candace is a very savvy woman, very wise, and she knows how to flip the switch when she needs to. And I did not like. So let me first of all, I feel like colorism can be very one-sided. A light-skinned girl is not going to win that argument against a dark girl that says, I felt like you were being colorist. In most situations, we are perceived to be the victim. And I think that's extremely unfair. That's just the way it is. But most times when you hear it from a darker person telling their story. And it's really nothing that the lighter person can do except sit back and listen and be open and willing to learn. Period. That's just my take on that. So I felt like what Candace did was a disservice to Giselle. And this is why I say that. Anything that Giselle can't say back without punishment is unfair. Candace brought up something that Giselle cannot change, which is her skin tone. That has nothing to do with nothing. You see what I'm saying? And the fact that she says your skin tone gives you proximity to being white. She didn't choose that. That's like somebody's gender. She can do nothing about it. And what happens is now that, to me, subconsciously, what you've done is you've created like this thing. She's not going to be able to be herself anymore, in my opinion, because Candace has said that. Because of your skin tone, you're closely connected to being white. And because of that, you should A, B, C, D. I thought that was very unfair. I thought it was very below the belt. I think anytime somebody comes at you against something that you cannot change, what are we doing? Because had Giselle says, because of your darkness, that's why you act a damn fool every time you open your mouth, we would have annihilated her. We would have canceled her. And that's why I say I think it's unfair. If she cannot come back at you like that, based on your skin tone, it should have never come out your mouth. So I really didn't like it. I felt like she put a target on Giselle only with the skin thing, right? Because when even Wendy called it, hey, listen, we've never talked about each other's skin tone. That was a pretty low blow, in my opinion. What are your thoughts?
I agree personally with you. I wish that in that moment, and I know you, Natasha, and Camille, you guys are probably not familiar, especially Camille. She's been working on her doctorate, so she don't have time to be watching these shows. But but I agree with you. I felt where Candace was coming from. I kind of wish that she didn't do it in that moment, because that when we have these type of conversations, when we're at a heated space, it turns into something more. It's the same thing on the opposite end with Camille and her situation, where it was supposed to be a beautiful thing or whatnot. Now Camille is looking like she's demonstrating colorism towards the other ladies. And that's what kind of flipped on Candace in this moment as well. Like, I know some people will say colorism is not a two-way street. Well, it affects both parties in our group, because they, like I said, they pit us against each other from the start. This was something that we consciously did to ourselves. This is over history of racism and slavery that have put us in this position to fight each other. So when we start doing it back in heated moments, it looks even worse than maybe it might be its truth. Maybe Candace does feel like Giselle's proximity to whiteness has put her in a place on the show, you know, to be favored or to be protected by producers in that. And Giselle might not see it, but Giselle's not going to see it when you come at her in this moment this way. She's just going to look at it, oh, you're mad, you're attacking me, so you're just going shooting off at the mouth, and this is your usual. Sometimes these conversations, even if I don't love you, have to be done from a place of love. It has to be said from a place of love, like, I'm not saying you're a bad person for being this color or this complected, because you can't control that. I'm saying you're using your privilege for being this color, this complected, in a negative light. And that negative light goes against me. And sometimes that's what has to be said. And that's what I wanted to get back to, where Natasha said, this is a myth. No, my privilege is not a myth. And I have to acknowledge it. Because as long as I don't acknowledge that me being light-skinned is a privilege in some places, that I can't help my sisters that are not light-skinned move forward when we are in those places. I can't garner the respect that I need from both sides because I'm playing the fence. So sometimes I have to address where I benefit in certain situations, just like my darker sisters will have to benefit like certain situations. If I go to certain countries with them where darker skin is favored over lighter skin, they have the benefit there. In America, lighter skinned people have it because Caucasian American have placed this on us to like literally make us look favored in their eyes. They still treat us the same. If the police pull me over right now, I'm still going to get hassled as a certain type of way. Now, when media gets to the conversation of, oh, why she get arrested and stuff, they may dumb it down a little bit because they look at my skin tone compared to somebody possibly darker than me. We can get pulled over for the same traffic infraction, and they will sit there and say, oh, well, we're just going to write you up, where they want to pull that other person out and make a demonstration out of them or example out of them. So yes, our privilege as being lighter skinned people does play a part in a lot of things in our everyday world. And it's a matter of how we use those things going forward. Do we use us to help us as a whole sisterhood, or we just use them for selfish reasons? And sometimes that's the conversation that we need to have amongst one another, is how are we actually using our privilege? Are we using it to benefit the whole community? Or we're using it just to benefit ourselves?
So I have a question. Being that African Americans struggle as is, right? Are we able to identify, are light-skinned women able to identify where that privilege lies?
I'll say I can only speak for myself in this situation. I have identified, coming from the South, it's easy to see. Sometimes you don't see it in certain communities, like certain areas and stuff. You know, you might be raised around a bunch of white people or whatnot, so you might not see it as a privilege. But when you come from Louisiana, so to speak, you know where the privilege is. You could tell I can be across a certain size of the track and I won't get harassed until they take a good look into my face. Because my skin tone, as long as I can block a lot of part of my features, I can walk down the street and it wouldn't be a problem. Now my sister, on the other hand, might have some issues because as soon as they see the skin tone is, what are you doing on this side of the track? Why are you over here? You know, it'd be those kind of things. And so it's, when you get it in certain areas, you know that you do have a privilege as far as being in that area. Now, the problem is times have been changing a lot rapidly, and we have a lot of more mixed race people. And so we're starting to get into an era where, oh, that doesn't exist because such and such over here is this and such is this, and there, you know, this community is blended with this community, but it still does. Because if we go out the country, certain areas in Asia, they can be all Asians, but if you're dark, it's still a problem. Certain Spanish communities, like Seaway said, if you're dark, it's still a problem. So we can't act totally like it doesn't exist around the globe, because it does. For whatever reason, darker skinned people, no matter what ethnic group you're a part of, they're frowned upon. And we have to try to figure out, why is that? Really? We could keep saying that, oh, they fear them, this is that and the third, but there's something deeper there. I've came up with, you know, my own little theories and stuff, but I don't even know if that's the truth. But there's something deeper there. And sometimes I just feel like there's a power in there that other people are afraid of. And I don't know what it is, you know what I'm saying? That's just my theories. It could be off the wall, but it's something that there's a magic within it that they don't want to come out. And I shouldn't use magic, especially in my religion, but there's something there that they don't want you to tap back into. So I don't know what it is. I don't know why we're on this thing of watering ourselves down and whatnot, because like I said, Black women, we can create any shade of person. So we don't need to be watering ourselves down. I don't know why our men want to do it so bad sometimes. And we just got to keep having these conversations, and maybe the truth will come out of what it is. I don't know. I don't. I'm sorry.
You know what I think it is, Camille? I think a lot of times if you're light, right, you may be able to recognize things in abstract. But what I've noticed, and again, just taking it back to Potomac, because I think that's the reunion as the best example. I think when it starts becoming you receive the benefit, you know, when it becomes personal is where I see the pushback, right? Because who wants to come to terms with the fact that they are getting special treatment? Because that would mean that that's taken away from what they feel like they earned. You know what I'm saying? So for example, Giselle has been the queen bee. Some say it's Karen, but in many ways, Giselle's been the queen bee of the franchise this whole time. And it's not up for debate that, well, at least for 3 or 4 of these years, she has given nothing, none of her personal life, no nothing, right? She's been able to be a quasi producer and skate by. Is she prepared to admit that the reason why she is still the face of this franchise is because she's pretty, light-skinned, with blonde hair, and that if she was not any of those things, that she would not have that position? Is she prepared to admit that? The answer is no. And the same thing with Robin. Robin actually has been a glorified side Robin to Giselle for 8, 9, however many seasons it is, right? Yeah, she's put her personal business out there because Juan has made her because he's so messy. But really, to be honest, she doesn't give much either. Is she prepared to say that she's only there because she passes for white? Because she actually looks like a white woman to me. I think I'm at this point, we know she's Black, kinda, but like she literally is white women appearing. She's actually the definition of passing, not the passing that some people be talking about. I'm talking about like OG passing, like legit passing. That's Robin. Is she prepared to admit that? No. So I think to answer your question, a lot of times people can they can admit these things in theory, but they don't want to believe that they didn't earn something, right? You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to admit I got into this good school because of affirmative action. You want to tell yourself, no, I got here because I was smart. When in reality, it could have been you got here because you were smart, and because of systematic racism, I don't know how long this is going to last because the Supreme Court, you got an extra because society and our culture and our, has already taken us down a bit. So they kind of even out the playing field. That really is the truth. But if you ask a lot of people, they're not prepared to admit that. They want to say they got there 100% on their own. When in reality, I could just take law school, for example. A lot of the Black people's LSAT scores were drastically lower than our white counterparts. That doesn't mean we're not smart. It probably just means the LSAT was already stacked against us and they tried to even the playing field. But people don't want to admit that. So, you know what I'm saying? I think that's the issue. And I'm gonna get on Candace later because I don't really agree with you, Queen, 100% about Candace, but I know where you're coming from. But
and I mean, Candace has a privilege of her own to say what she wants. Number one, she's married to a white man that verbally attacked I didn't like his tone, period. You see what I'm saying? Man to woman, watch your tone. There's a lot of Black men that have addressed Black women, and we'd have been like, oh, hold up now. You need to watch it. Hold on. You don't have to. But we let him pass if we want to talk about privilege. But we would have held a brother's feet to the fire. Like, what are you doing? Number one. Number two, I don't want to dequalify Giselle and Robin based on the color of their skin, right? Because if they didn't have that title, somebody will. So when you look at the other franchises, the Housewives, we don't hear the colorism argument on Real Housewives of Atlanta, right? Because Candy is up there, but it was Nene. There's a hierarchy, y'all. When we talk about how does this thing work?
Who's light skin on Atlanta?
They just don't cast them. Maybe they didn't make the cut. That's what I'm saying. They didn't make the cut.
But
so
a
light skinned woman could easily say, what's her name? Shamira? You remember Ronnie DeVoe's wife? She was on there. She's lighter. I thought she was excellent. I thought she brought something. She didn't even make it past 2 seasons.
I think Ronnie had to do with that one though.
And I think we have to be careful of crying victim, because she could easily say, well, you cut me because it's a more dominant, darker cast, and because I was the only light. Oh, what's the other girl's name? Tanya. I feel like Tanya brought it. Tanya
left herself though. She left after the stripper gate. She removed herself.
She did, but she didn't cry colorism neither.
But she removed herself though.
Right.
She didn't want the smoke. They would have kept her.
But I think when we think about the Real Housewives, is it really colorism or is it favoritism? We hear favoritism a lot. Like when you think about I watched the one California, not Beverly Hills, the other one, Orange County, when Tamara threw a glass of wine in that lady's face. You got to go way back. She threw a glass of wine, and I thought Tamara got away with it because the lady was heavier. I was like, oh, she's petite and blonde, all white women, but she was allowed to throw a glass of wine in a heavier white woman's face, right? And I thought she should have been pulled. It was many, many years ago. It was a violent throw. It wasn't like, here you go. I don't know. I just want us to be careful to call a thing a thing. Is colorism real? Absolutely. But I want to make sure that we're not utilizing it in an argument, not us ladies, but some ladies on the show, as a get out of jail free card. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I do think if we're going back to Candace, her issue is a stem of colorism. Like you said, I think that she's been hurt. She may have been called names. She may have faced some backlash growing up. And as I think we said it on the other channel that we were on when we were together, she's in the pageant world. Again, in the pageant world, you're dealing with beauty as being closest thing to Eurocentric features, right? And so she must have faced something, number one, in order for her to, number one, get Caucasian man, and that's her husband. And as a result, she has that hate for Giselle and for Robin. I think it all stems from colorism, but that is something that she has to deal with herself. And I don't think she's dealing with it in the proper light. So it's not necessarily reversed, but it comes from, it's all a result of colorism.
I agree. And I think Miss Dorothy, her mom, has not helped her by way of self-esteem.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because that's why I said I wish she didn't say it in that moment, because in hindsight, you're going to look back when you actually start making babies with this man, your babies are going to be somewhere in between. I can't guarantee, because, we just don't know which gene is going to be stronger. But his children that you are a bonus mom to are in between. Their likeness is there, So it's just one of those things that it was just, you just out of anger, you let these ladies get to you, and you went off on what's already out there, is the audience looking at it as a colorist situation. Like Seaway say, I don't think Giselle is ever going to admit her place on that or whatever. But because the audience says it, now we're going to use it as a weapon against each other. And that's what the problem comes in, because that's what I see, like with you, Camille, in your situation, your thing wasn't meant to be a negative or whatnot. But because we are still, and that's why I can't say it's a myth, because we're still suffering, because it wouldn't affect us so much if one person in the audience said, oh, that was a colorist thing you just did, or that person's being a colorist. Now all the rest of the audience is up in arms. Why? Because it still affects us. We are still, unfortunately, in a slave mentality. We're not that far removed from the situation. So a lot of us still have a lot of deprogramming to do. And that doesn't just come from the slavery. It comes from what it was inherited through our parents through slavery. This can even go further back than that. Because, if we get into some technical things, there were some parts of Africa that threw you out if you were albino. There's still some parts now that you're looking at them as lucky rabbit feet. So we have it going on both sides, that we have this self-hate for ourselves, that we are not getting the love that we need, and our parents are not grooming that in us and instilling that in us from birth, to say that your color is okay, your complexion is okay. The world is going to throw so much at you, and they're going to use your color as a weapon against you. And you cannot allow that to happen. And so that's what we have to do going forward when we start producing and reproducing with people or whatnot, allowing our kids to grow up knowing that they did not choose whatever color skin they come into, but God made them perfect. God made them beautiful. And so once we start learning how beautiful we are, can't nobody else tell us about ourselves. Can't nobody else bring us down. And we don't have enough space in our hearts to be hating on the next person because they came out a light shade lighter than us. I find beautiful darker skinned people. And I've been passed over for those people. And I didn't look at it and say, oh, you like their skin. That was never the reason. And when you go into modeling, and my thing, my features, like I said, are just not Euro, as they put it, enough. So therefore, I get looked over for darker skinned women that are more Euro. And then in some cases, playing in the middle in modeling is not beautiful. You're either white or you're black. Like, and I mean dark black. You have to be African black or you have to be white. Anything in between, yeah, no. So it was one of those stigmas that I had to learn, that, you know what, my beauty is my beauty. And people are going to accept my beauty for what it is, as long as I'm confident when I walk into the room. If I walk into a room with white people, you're going to see me. If I walk into a room with black people, you're going to see me, because it's not my beauty you're looking at. You're seeing my confidence. So we have to start learning how to instill that into one another as ladies, as women going forward, to be comfortable enough to go past a woman and say, you know what, sis, you got really good hair. You got, and I don't mean good hair like that, meaning your hairstyle is good. I ain't talking about you got the wet and wavy naturally and all this stuff, because that's a whole nother topic we're having for another month. But, meaning that your hairstyle is good. Oh, your makeup is on point. Your skin is flawless. This, that, and the third. Now, I will tell y'all dark-skinned women, I love y'all skin, okay? Because this right here be getting on my nerves, bro. Trying to find the right shade of makeup and all this stuff. I ain't gonna lie, this get on my nerves. But, there's different things that we fighting against on a regular. So it's like, we got to just really, that's what I'm keep harping on. We got to stop fighting each other. We got to start pouring love into one another. We got to start getting ourselves back confident enough to go into this world and deal with all the BS that the rest of the world is going to throw at us. Because again, we at the bottom of their totem pole. So that means everything falls on us. So we don't need to be falling on each other all the time for everything outside of, I got to know you, we just don't click. That's a whole different thing. If I get to meet you and we just don't click, then that's a whole different thing. And at the same time, if we don't click, I still don't really have to hate you. I don't have to hate you like this. I don't have to talk bad about you. I don't have to talk about you at all. That's just how I look at it. If I don't like you, I just don't talk about you. Stuff. But I feel like a lot of times when we start talking about people, especially in a negative way, there's things about ourselves that person makes us feel uncomfortable about. So we have to highlight all of their negativity that we think that they have. We got to put insecurities on them to make them feel less about themselves so we can feel better about ourselves. And if we stop doing that, I think we'll move like super fast in this world, pass up a lot of things in this world, and we start making a real change. And I ain't expecting us to have this change in this one conversation, but there's a couple of people out here that gonna start looking at themselves and say, you know what, let me stop doing that. Let me stop hating on this person because I didn't even take the time to get to know them because I just was turned off by their skin color. And I get it. Sometimes some people in our childhood, they're not the nicest to us. And we don't have that understanding as children to say, you know what, it's not their skin tone that's making them not nice to me. Sometimes it's not my skin tone that's why they don't like me or they made fun of me. They just didn't have nothing better to go off of, so they went off of what they can see. And when our children come home and tell us about these things and we ask about the day and they say, oh, this person made fun of them, we got to reassure them it is not because there's something wrong with our child. And not necessarily wrong with that other person's child. They just don't have the understanding and the capacity yet to know that they got to learn something about you first to say why they really don't like you, or they actually do like you. Because us kids, we like to sit here and pick on you and stuff when we like you, tell you all kind of mean things, but every day we come to mess with you because we just want to be around you and we want your attention. And some of us don't never grow out of that when we get older. We don't never know how to sit there and just say, you know what, I like you. I don't know what it is about you I like, but I like you. Go ahead, Natasha.
Okay, yeah, so I'm jumping. So you spoke back again on the my statement that was myth. Maybe that was the wrong word, or maybe I didn't do a good job when I brought it back in the second time, but just to reiterate, that's why I spoke about my experience with protesting and white privilege, because and kind of to touch on Camille's question with regard to being able to like recognize it, you have to. So regardless of what my own personal experiences have been, you can't ignore what you see and what you're aware of. So me referring to it as a myth is the fact that it is a false belief that the prejudice and bias, what colorism truly is within our community, it's false. That is a myth to say that someone based upon their color, their complexion, their shade of brown is this or more this or less this or not that or whatever. That's what's false, and that's a fact. And the fact that, and that's why I came back to say that even though it shouldn't be a thing, and even though it is a myth that someone, you can gauge someone's reaction to something or someone's personality based upon their complexion is not true. It absolutely is present. And that's why, I think that these conversations have to happen. With regard to me recognizing it, I think that it's kind of like when you know better, you do better. So that's why you have to be around people who are truly, a part of your village, people who are truly your friends that know you, because if I am not aware of something, I'm not going to argue nobody down. And I don't remember who brought it up earlier, but the person who is really in that moment that has that experience, they are the best source of that. So if one of my friends or someone I'm around is saying that this was based on this, then I'm going to listen to it. And if that wasn't my first impression, I want to understand why they feel that way, so that either I can change my way of thinking, learn something from it, or try to talk to them about considering other, reasons for it. During this conversation about the Real Housewives of Potomac, I didn't watch it. You're right, I am too busy, but now I'm gonna go watch it because I'm like, I want to put all of these things together and see, how it really played out. I'm familiar enough with the characters or the, cast from the show. See, that's my experience with the show. I can't even refer to them as real people because we don't know the real people. We know them as characters and cast. But I will say that, just in this conversation, it's been that, she may not have recognized it as colorism, but people from the outside said, oh, that's because of this. But we don't really know what the real reason was, because just in this conversation, it was, oh, no, it's favoritism, or, oh, no, it was because of, her status or this, or, pretty privilege is a thing. We talk about that often. So there are just so many sources of privilege that you don't know what the source of the bias is. We just recognize that there is some bias, there is some favoritism or whatever there, and we apply our own experiences and our own thoughts and beliefs to what we think the source of that was. So like Queen Shiba, you said that when you saw a previous episode that see, I had to run to the restroom, but I was listening. You saw a previous episode of another show and you felt that, oh, well, they didn't do anything about that because of this factor. That's us. We can't check our previous experiences, our wisdom, our knowledge, the things that we've learned and had, go on in our life. We can't just check that at the door and come to experience and be completely empty and just focus on just that experience. You're bringing your knowledge, what you know, what you've gone through into every situation. And sometimes you can be spot on. You can say, oh, I know this when I see it. That's based on this. And sometimes you can be right because you're not in the situation. So I think that this conversation is still very, very, very important. So I don't want to mince words there, but I do think that it's a problem within our community that stems from the brainwashing that I mentioned earlier. And I mean, there's just so many good books that we can read to truly learn about this, to understand the source of it. So I never want this conversation to be pointing the fingers within our community, because it's not our fault. But it is, by definition, colorism is prejudice and bias based on someone's complexion within the community of the people. So it's us, it's not them. So we got to fix it from within. You got to, like when someone's, like one time I got sick and I had asthma as a kid and I had bronchitis and pneumonia and all this other stuff, and they couldn't treat it because they had to treat the asthma, and none of the doctors were really treating the asthma. They were treating what the asthma was causing or what was affected by it. So it's the same kind of thing. We can point fingers to the source because that's absolutely the ultimate blame. However, the problem is within our community. So let's talk about where those biases stem from, and let's talk about why Camille immediately felt that way when that happened and why. And let's get to the cancer, the root of it, and try to fix it, because we really should all be coming together, and we should understand that my experience as lighter skin, people be saying I'm yellow, but I'm truly red bone. But I still have my experiences and I'm affected by colorism. However, I understand that my experiences may not reach the level of and are not the same as someone else's that has from a different place. Because like you mentioned, in Louisiana, you recognize so yes, sometimes we can recognize it. Other times we cannot. Growing up in elementary school, I was one of two, maybe the only Black person in my class. So in that class, it didn't matter the fact that I was light skinned. It didn't matter because I was the only Black. I experienced racism directly from my teachers. I experienced racism directly from, other adults in administration. And those were my experiences because that's where I was. Now, if I would have been in a different school where there were different hues of brown and Black, people going to school with me, then my experience would have been different. But that's why when you know better, you do better. So the goal should be to learn, to have these conversations, explore and listen to other people's perspective, because perspective is worth way more than reality. Let's call a spade a spade. And, just truly learn and glean from wow, that's your experience. Okay, what can I build from this so that when I go through different situations, I'm taking your experience along with me, and I'm not, kind of ignorantly catering to the bias, even because some people just ignorantly be like, oh, that's not true, or dismiss it because they don't know about it. No, open your ears, open your heart, and really be open to learning and experiencing through other people. You don't have to go through it yourself.
Natasha, what you just said really rang true to me, and it was kind of goes into what I was going to say. I really think that colorism, like white privilege and racism, is very nuanced. It's very hard to pinpoint sometimes. And sometimes, depending on your perspective and your background and your history, that's how you view it. And so, in particular with the Candace situation, I wasn't even a Candace fan last year. She's made a complete 180 with me. I wasn't her biggest fan. So before someone says that I'm, caping for her, I really didn't like her character at all. For up until this season, I was not a fan, right? I didn't like what happened to Monique, none of that, right? So I just want to put that, lay the foundation for that. But there was two things that stood out to me. Candace was the only person that asked for a moderator. Even Wendy was on the team on Natasha, you didn't watch it, but they gave them an option to have a moderator to kind of guide the discussion on colorism. And Candace was the only one that asked for a moderator. I won't speak as to why Wendy didn't want a moderator, but I have my opinions, right? So Candace is the only one. Now, Candace did say some few things, like Jay said, that I don't agree with, right? She said stuff out of anger because I think she's really upset about what happened to her husband, as anybody married would be if your husband's job has been affected based on ridiculous claims that were ill-founded, right? And now he's lost his job, or his job is at jeopardy, blasey skippy, because of things that have been said, right? And I think she was really angry about the culmination of everything that has happened to her and her husband, that honestly, it's not up for debate. It's completely unnecessary what they went through. But a lot of times I see the fact that we are discrediting and discounting her experience with colorism because we don't see it. And so when we have this conversation, I think we're not really moving the needle forward if, like Natasha says, we don't leave space for what she saw. Because for me, even though I didn't experience, like I said, not one comment my entire life from Black people or otherwise about my skin color, but I can still see where she's coming from. I can still see where she's coming from as far as the situation with Giselle and Robin and others. Because for me, from what I've seen different treatment with the way Mia, who tossed a drink on Wendy's face, was treated versus how Monique was treated for her getting into a physical fight. I've seen different treatment for the stuff that Ashley has started versus others. I can't ignore that. But I do think, like Natasha said, there's lots of reasons why people get privilege and favoritism. I think being pretty gives you favoritism. I think lighter skin gives you favoritism. I think actually being able to go with the flow and be a production pawn gets you favoritism. A lot of the times, if you're not willing to go with the flow, we can go back. I know Queen mentioned like a Claudia and other people. I think they were probably they're going to do their own thing. They're not going to go with the flow. It doesn't matter what color they are. So it wasn't going to work, right? And then the weight thing. A lot of times, let me tell you, Jay knows, I was skinny my whole life, track and field athlete, everything, right? Never was heavier. I got sick, was on prednisone, and I gained a lot of weight. For the first time in my life, I went through a space, still not super heavy, but as a heavier person. And when I tell you, it was an eye-opening experience how I was treated once I was heavier, to the point where now even though I've lost the weight, I can't unsee it. The stuff that people said about me on this YouTube, people called my face swollen. People said so many things and I went from being gawked at and trying to get people to get my number attention to being in clubs and spaces where people will bump my shoulder and not see me because I was overweight. So all I'm saying is there's so many different types of favoritism that if someone now in the space I am now said, I think I was treated poorly because I was heavier, maybe before I wouldn't have sympathy or understand, and now I understand. If someone told me I was treated poorly because I was heavy, I was darker skinned, I leave space for that. So I do know that Candace is not a perfect person. I think she's, somewhat agitating. I think she has her own issues. But I do think that, if we're talking about the Atlanta cast versus the Potomac cast, and then I'll let Queen or, Camille, whoever respond, all the girls on the Atlanta class, dark skin or not, had to bring it. Kenya had to bring it. The moment she said that she wasn't going to put Mark on there, they demoted her. Literally, Nene was the best housewife, undisputed of all time, right? Candy is a freaking millionaire, and she may not bring drama, but she's going to bring everything else, right? The dark-skinned girls on Atlanta, Portia, still one of the best housewives. I mean, you can't be dark-skinned and basic in Atlanta. None of them were. Versus in Potomac, I mean, it's just basicness all the way around. Giselle, beautiful, basic. Robin, beautiful, basic. Ashley does bring the tea. I ain't going to call her basic. She does. I enjoy her on the screen. Mia is not even the aesthetic of a housewife. She's completely just, what is that? And she's on there. So, okay, we're not going to do hue police. Some people say Portia's dark skin. Some people say she's in the middle. Point is, y'all know what I'm saying, right? She doesn't look like Giselle. She doesn't look like Robin, for darn sure. Doesn't look like Ashley with curly hair. Doesn't look like Mia. She don't look like none of those people, right? So that's all I'm saying. I think we got to leave space and uplift. And I like what Karen did. Karen is light skin or medium light skin and still gave space for Candace to express herself, even if she hasn't personally seen it, because she also knows that Giselle ain't doing crap but producing and wreaking havoc on people's marriages. And I don't think she would have been able to do that if she was dark-skinned. I really don't think that she would be able to do that if she was dark-skinned.
I can't say that. I don't know that. All I'm saying is Candace is not a victim. Leaving space and hearing someone is completely different than disagreeing. I can leave space and hear you and still disagree with you, because Candace had the space to express herself. And on the other end, she took the space and she issued insult, right? Candace's argument, in my opinion, is when they do it, it's okay. But when I do it, people have a problem. Y'all, the issue is don't do it. Don't go low. That's what we should be talking about, how Black women get on these shows and attack each other for a check, right? Because when we start to say, well, she did it and she did it, they're both doing it for a check. So let's like, if we really back it up, the question is, how low will you go to get paid, right? And because I didn't get away with it, what she got away with, which we're both doing, we both signed up for it, right? We both go toe to toe. It's just that this year I felt like it was unfair. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about children. We're talking about grown ass Black women that are on television acting a fool for a paycheck. That's not colorism in that moment. That's you volunteering yourself over to the world to tear down another Black woman. And when you feel like you don't get away with it, your argument is, well, they got away with it because they are lighter skinned. Maybe, maybe not. We don't even know, because you joined the fight. You joined the fight. How about if you didn't get involved, we could probably look at it a little bit more clearly. But it's not like she has clean hands. That's all I'm saying. That's the first thing. Candace has annihilated her own white husband on television. Nobody's off limits to Candace. Candace has said things to Chris and cursed him out I think it was 2 seasons ago. Do y'all remember when they were in a restaurant and Chris was being nice to one of the ladies? That he was being nice to Ashley. They were out, they were somewhere. You remember a group bought them shots and he was trying to make nice with Ashley on this, on the behalf of his wife, because you have to have group dynamics, right? When you talk about reality television, they want you to protect the well-being of the show. When you get to a point where you cannot show up and film with everybody, that's when they have to start making decisions. Nene got to a point where Nene bought into her own stardom. Nene had to go because Nene put the well-being of the show, which means the man on top. Like you said, Camille, the white people we don't know that really run shit, right? When you start messing up excuse my language, when you start, I completely forgot. I'm not doing a review. But so they'll let you go so far before and Nene bought into her own stardom, forgetting who's really in charge, right? So Nene had to go, right? At that point, it didn't matter what she thought she brought. When you start bringing trouble to them, they'll start tapping you on your shoulder and, hey, why don't we just go over here? Let me talk to you over here, and you never come back. Candace at one point, forgotten. I'm not even talking about this season. You start to see Candace unravel, y'all, about three years ago. She started unraveling with her husband. So there's definitely something there. There were times Candace could not have a conversation without breaking down to cry. So what I'm saying is, at some point as a grown woman, you have to say, this is too much for me. Before we get to colorism, my mental well-being, my family, my peace surpasses all of this. And that's what I'm saying. We're not holding each other accountable. We're just going, we're not talking, we're talking about the effect, right? But if we step back, we can say, all of this is a problem if we really talk about it, because this is not what we want to see to this capacity. Yeah, colorism is the effect, but what's the real cause? Bad behavior. And because somebody feel like somebody else got a leverage over them because of the tone of their skin, when all of y'all are wrong for the things that you say about each other's families, each other's husband, kids, because Wendy slighted Giselle's children and thought they didn't catch it on camera. When the girls say, I don't want to be around Wendy because every time I'm around Wendy, she makes me feel uncomfortable. They've all done things they should not have done. That's all I'm saying. So it's really hard for me to talk about a small piece when I've been watching it for years and to focus on this small piece without me taking into consideration the historical context of how they got here.
Well, I'll sum it up like this. Had Wendy been the one who addressed it, being that she had the alcohol thrown in her face and was attacked by not Mia as well as Robin in the case, I think we can fully say somewhat of colorism, because she was definitely being antagonized by Robin, who has been aggressive since season 1. And I think what our problem is as the audience, a lot of the audience members, and this is why I said this is what comes from the audience, a lot of audience members did not call Robin out to the floor as being aggressive from the start. Just of late, we've been saying she's aggressive. That's because it had to be addressed by Wendy last year. It's saying when light-skinned women or lighter shade women do these things, we don't call them aggressive. But as soon as a dark-skinned woman starts to speak hot in an elevated voice, now she's being aggressive. Because Wendy had the just cause to really say this was an attack on me and we still don't know why these ladies keep screaming, we don't like Wendy. And that's why I was kind of saying earlier, when we never ask that extra question as, well, why you don't like me? Because that's the new devil. That's the new thing. And that's why I was saying to you, not to attack you, Natasha, when I was saying it was a myth, because when I first started this, I said that colorism is like the devil. It likes to hide in the details of everything. So when I'm not asking you, well, why is it you don't like me? Well, I don't have to address that. It's because of your color. I don't have to say anything. I can just say, I don't like you. Now, these women could possibly not like Wendy because of her color and all that comes with it, all her accolades that come with it. They can say that, and then we can easily drop it down and say, well, I don't like that you got 4 degrees and you keep throwing in our face. Well, it's still hiding behind. The colorism is still hiding behind everything that she has accomplished. Sometimes that goes in, and we forget that Black women had to do all the extras just to be seen. Now that Wendy has done all the extras, we're still mad at her. Candace is sitting behind her family's fortune. Some of these ladies could be mad because she's darker skinned and sitting behind her family's fortune. But we don't ask that extra question sometimes that need to be asked. Well, what is it that you really don't like about Candace? Candace can give you a lot of reasons not to like her. She does have a lot of reasons you cannot like her. And there's a lot of reasons you can like Candace. But we can sit there and not ask that extra question and keep asking these questions till we get to the actual bottom of it. And colorism sits behind all of that. So that's why I say when we say colorism is like the devil, it sits in the details of everything. It sits behind racism. It sits behind prejudiceness. It sits behind just, I hate you because you accomplished these things. Sometimes you being a darker skin, you have to go the extra mile. And now I can sit here, all the extra mile that you done did, I can throw that in your face. But the reality is you're a dark skinned woman and you accomplished that. That's not right. Well, and then in some cases, and I'm not saying that me or Natasha does this, but there are some lighter skinned women that sit there and look at that and say, well, I was light skinned and I'm pretty. And some people with pretty privilege, period, say, oh, I was pretty, so I should have been able to do that. And they look at you and feel like I have a problem with you. Now, there is nuances. There's lots of little details that colorism can hide up under and all that stuff. So that's why when I said I don't know where the root of it comes from, it's so hard to figure out where the root of it comes from. When I say it's not really a myth, but like you said, Natasha, it is a myth. We look at the devil the same way. We don't know where he comes from. We don't even know his actual real name, but that's a title. We don't know which angel is actual the devil. That's not the devil's name. That's a title. Satan is a title. So it plays so many different factors. And it plays so many different roles that we can't address it. The system that they created around it. Racism has changed its name so many times. It's changed its look so many different times that it's hard to pinpoint it, to address it, to stop it. The same thing with colorism. We're going to continue to have this conversation for many years to come, because we're never going to get to the root of it, of where it came from, how it stemmed, and how to stop it. But we can slow it down. We can begin to put a pause on it. It's slowed down already because now we have so many interracial relationships. It's hard to talk about it. So it's changed its form to featureism, to texturism, to all these other little things. But a lot of it still stems under colorism, still stems under racism, still stems under prejudice. So we're going to be talking about this for days to come, unfortunately. But a lot of us could hide behind a whole bunch of other little things, and we could put all of that in the front first, that you forget that underlining it, I don't like you because of your color. And unfortunately, that's what the world that we live in. A lot of these Caucasian people still don't address that they don't like us for no reason other than we're a different shade. Yet all day long, they're in tanning booths, they're injecting their faces, they're doing all of these things to be just like us. Stole half of our lives, but want to get on these platforms in our chats telling us how we are inferior and we at their schools and we doing all this because they have erased our history and put theirs in place. All you did was beat us to the punch. You didn't really do nothing. All you did was take away our voice, but put your name on top of our labels. So yes, it's going to be a hard thing that we have to keep talking about this, and we got to keep addressing it over and over and over because it's going to still exist. But like Queen says, we can't say that these women are actually giving off colorism to each other, but we can say that the audience still feels it. The audience still sees it to some degree. I can't say that Giselle is going to ever realize that she lives in her privileges and say, you know what, you guys are right. Let me step down from this spot, because some of us have a little bit of tendency that when we get in the spotlight, we ain't trying to move from it. So, that might be a hard place. We also can't say that Candace didn't experience it, but she chose bad timing for sure to address it, because you're coming off the heel of the conversation. And I believe Candace is smart enough to know what saying what she said was going to do in that moment, especially to us as the audience. I can't take away that Camille had good intentions when she said, okay, from the producer saying BGS is a great thing. Did I say the initials right? The acronym right? Did I say it right? Okay. When she said it was a great thing or whatever, but then when they spent it and turned it into something else. The devil's going to play in the details just like this every single time. As we're going to have this great conversation, and somebody's going to take this conversation and chop it up the way they want and put it on a platform and say, see, these ladies, they doing this, that, and the third. What we can do as individuals, though, is look at ourselves and sit there and say, how am I playing a part in this? How do I change this? How do I use my privilege in this moment to help lift my sister up? Or how do I use, what they have put on me as no longer a weapon against my sister, but as a tool for my community to progress? We got to lift each other up. You know what I'm saying? Like, if in some cases, if my darker hue sisters are the ones who have to lead the forefront, so be it. I got to be there, their cheerleader, and so forth. And then on the flip end, as a lighter skin, and where my privilege has worked and works for me, I have to be able to bring my darker skinned sister in and say, see, we are okay. You don't have to fear us no matter what shade we are. You don't have to tolerate me at my workplace because you feel like my lighter skin makes it better for you to be okay with say, oh, I hired a Black person on my staff. They go to that new extreme. And it was another lady I did want to get on here because she's a producer for another show. And she spoke on how they kicked pretty much all the Black people off of the show, but left the one Asian mix girl who is mixed, but her features are more Asian, even though she's Black, on the show, just because they can prove, oh, well, see, we have a different ethnicity. We have a Black person on there. Because when they do all of these little bitty things, this is how we end up having this talk right now about colorism. Yet it's not us per se always doing it to ourselves, but other people do this so they can further our divide in our community. Make you want to wash yourself down, make you think your Black is not beautiful, make you feel inferior or weaker. Go ahead and jump in, Natasha.
Yeah, I just want to jump in because I think that it all comes down to, like I pointed out, Queen Shiba said 2 things that I wrote down at the top of my list for the most powerful things that I learned from my therapist in 2022, which was, one of them was words have value. And the other was, that don't belong to me. So in this case, like, it just comes back from us taking our power. So part of the beauty of social media and really understanding a lot about our history and our ancestry is to be able to allow that to fuel and motivate our intent to say, like, oh nah, like, y'all did this is our history, however, this is where we come from, I'm learning more about it, and allow that to build you up and not be affected by that stuff. So if someone says to someone like, oh, you just got that because of your complexion, say, okay, like, just keep it moving. Like, don't let that stuff have power, whether within our community or outside. And then eventually, if it's not worth anything, if it doesn't have value, then where are you going to spend it? So I like my examples and my analogies and my stories. So the one that comes to mind is when I got my first job as a practicing attorney, one of my classmates from law school said, oh, like, aren't you concerned that people are going to think you got that job, like, just because you're pretty? Because one of the partners had a history, allegedly, of hiring girls just based, like, the fact that whether they were attractive or whatever. And I was like, well, why would anybody think that? Because I didn't get it because of that. And she was like, oh, well, everyone says this. And that was something I never thought of. And I had a conversation with my stepmother, and I was like, oh, people were saying, like, she was saying this. And she said, well, So what? If you got the job because you are more attractive or you look good or whatever, we all know that's true. But if you did, so what? Because that's not going to keep you there. So that has always like given me that kind of power, because it doesn't matter, because you don't know what it is. If you have 4 privileges overlapping, yeah, one or all of them may have been the reason why you got something, but either you didn't get something else because of the other negative things. There's plenty of things that I've been turned down from, judged, incorrectly, or treated inappropriately because of the fact that I'm Black, regardless of my shade, regardless of my complexion. So maybe some of the things that have just been handed to me are to replace some of the things that weren't given to me that I truly did earn, because we've all been through that where we earned something. I mean, look at the whole thing with Angela Bassett, and that's a huge thing. It's still something that is going to be a topic of discussion, but at the end of the day, the end of that story, when someone talks about it, should be that award doesn't change the fact that she's an amazing actress. That award, or that show, whoever makes the decisions as to who gets the award, doesn't change the fact that she's worked very hard and she's good at what she does. We all know that, and she knows that. I guarantee it, she has to know that. So we just can't give these people that have that power. If that's the truth, then all right. Like, if you got in the door because they needed to check the box for diversity, then okay, do your thing while you're there, make it happen, and then bring other people in with you. Like, let's change the narrative. Let's change where we go with this, and not just make it a conversation just for sake of talking. Like, that's the same as like gossiping. If we're just gonna like talk about it and not truly want to affect change, like, we want to affect change from having the conversation. That's why we're talking about it, to change people's perspectives, to change how this is received, and what the perspective is for more people will eventually have a major effect on the actual reality.
That was good stuff, Natasha.
I love that. I love
That was really good. I'll share one nugget that somebody shared with me. I have a very demanding job, the only one at the table. When you talk about product developers, and when you look at who's typically in that role, first of all, men, Middle Eastern white, and then white women. Rarely do you see a Black girl, at not saying that they don't exist, but rarely do you see them. So when I walked into the role, I kind of knew what it was. Like, immediately after 3 months, I'm like, oh, they're kind of talking over me in meetings. I'm kind of being shunned or interrupted. And I talked to, my boss. I was like, it's because I'm, and she's African American. She's like, I said, I kind of feel like I'm being shunned because, I'm the only one in the room sometimes. She's like, but are you going to let that bother you? Because if you let that bother you, if you let that get in your head, you're going to show up like that. Your skin tone has nothing to do with what you can do and your productivity. Remember who you are and show up with your skill set. And it took at first I thought she was dismissing my concerns. Does that make sense? But when I really took the time to process it, and it took me a long time to process it, because what I felt was real to me. Being uncomfortable, frustrated, sometimes not even wanting to get on calls with people, navigating through real anxiety. Like, damn, I don't want to talk to this person. They're very demeaning and condescending. And then one day I woke up, I said, I know what she's saying. She's telling me don't buy into being a victim, because they're going to continue to victimize me. I got to break out of this bubble. And it took me a while, just because I had to work through my own ideology and my own thoughts. But when I broke out, I broke out. And when I tell you, you get raises in March. When you think about raises in most traditional corporations, 0% to 100%. Listen, 122% bonus, not raise. I'm sorry, not my raise, my bonus, performance bonus. And I was like, oh, that's what she mean. Break out. And that's what you're saying, Natasha. Yes, they will condemn you and hold you there. But what she was trying to teach me is your choice if you choose to stay there and adapt to what they see you as, because they're going to see you as that no matter what. If they don't like you because you're darker skinned, it ain't nothing you can do to change that. But what she gave me, y'all, It really does work. Break out. It's like a breakout role. When people try to typecast you and you see certain people play the same roles over and over and over, now you've become typecast. And it's really hard for a Hollywood producer to cast you for anything else. She was saying break out of it. And it took a while, but when I did, I did. And I wanted to get, and the only reason why I shared the bonus is because people like to hear outcomes. You know, people, like you said, when we're talking, people want to hear, how did that work for you? And that's how that worked for me.
Quick question before we break off on this. For you in that moment, were you struggling with that stereotype? Well, if I speak up and say something now, I'm the angry Black woman, or I'm the aggressive one now.
Yes, I was juggling all of that in my head, but at the same time, I have to speak up because I'm the product developer, right? So I'm like, they want me to speak up, but they don't want me to speak up, and it's tricky because if I do too much, but if I don't speak up, you're incompetent. She really doesn't know what she's doing. Like in meetings, all of that I was fighting with, and I'm pretty sure most of us have been there. You know, period. As a Black man, Black woman, not just with other people, but just I don't know, whether it's corporate America, personal relationships, in-laws, you know what I'm saying? Like, let me sit back because I want to be in whatever it is. And it took me some time to work through that. I was trying to measure how I showed up. And she was just saying, just show up. You can't measure you. Just show up. Because the people that don't like you, they already don't like you. Whatever it is, because of your skin tone, because you're Black, whatever. Yeah. But to answer your question, yes.
Yeah, everybody won't be a fan. And now I can't get y'all don't have the song "The Time Has Come for Me to Break Out of a Shell." Y'all don't hear that playing in your head? I'm coming out. Well, I hear it. But I'm sure Seaway, you can relate. Like literally the legal field is so male dominated. I have to tell people all the time that it is white male, Black male, white woman, Black woman. Like, just focusing on, main Black and white. There's other races mixed in, but so often, and if you don't break out, then they're gonna be like, see, I told you she didn't know what she was doing, told you she didn't have the experience, told you. So it's like, do you want to prove them right, or do you want to show, yeah, okay, you got the job because you have checked the box, or you got the job because whatever. Even if you got the job, because most jobs are got like you attain them through like networking or knowing somebody. So what? Just get in the door. When you get in the door, show out, because you're not gonna stay there regardless of the reason that you got in the door. Because of that reason, like that's not gonna keep you there. It doesn't even matter if it's like nepotism or your daddy owned the company. If you there not doing nothing, they're gonna move you out of the way. So get in the door. However, don't be focused on that. Don't let that affect you. And then once you get in, then you have your breakout role and show out. Dang, 122% bonus though. Dang.
Sorry, I was trying to share something because what you had brought up, Queen. Red Table Talk had a little thing with a doctor, and it was part of gaslighting where you get stuck in the stigmatism of being an angry Black woman or whatnot, and that's what they use against us a lot of times. I'm gonna see if I can get this up real quick because it blocked me while I was trying to talk at the
Well,
same
they've
time.
gotten more clever now. They'll say, I don't feel like I'm getting the support I need. Maybe there's a disconnect. Now it's different. You know what I'm saying? Of how it's worded. So, as the world turns and as we evolve, other people around us evolve. Like Camille said, I would have never known who the real executive producers were. So now they've gotten savvy with hiding behind the scenes and putting different decoys in front of us, to say
Right.
the
Let me
least.
get this to come up. Let me see if I can get it.
Your volume is out.
So,
Yeah, you want to click share volume on there or click the volume.
let me see. Not letting me do it. Give me 1 second. Let me try it again. No,
Can you turn it up? I can hear it. I heard it a tiny bit. Yeah, we can't hear it.
Can you hear it now?
No.
Still?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Because it's playing on my end. Okay.
If you want to send it to me, I can try. Oh no, I can't. It's not mine. Never mind.
Did I just knock Natasha down? Hold on a second. Yeah, I would have to. Sorry, Natasha. I think I accidentally knocked you down.
No, my computer died.
Okay. Can you hear it when I have it playing in my background just now?
Mm-mm.
Without it playing? Oh, I wonder why this is hating on me today. Oh, you know what? I can't send it to you because it still won't play. I'll have to make you a moderator on here.
Can you download it or no? Or
Let
can
me
you
see if I can
capture your
download it.
screen by way of video or nah, that's too much. Never mind.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to do a screen share. Let me see if if I bring it all the way up. Let me try to bring it all the way up off of their page. And maybe it'll come up because it's showing. Yeah, because the doctor had made a great point about how they use racial gaslighting at work. Basically, they'll when you start speaking up for yourself, they'll make you feel some type of way. They'll make you feel like you're doing too much, or you're asking too much, or you're not, like you said, being a team player no more. You're not being supportive of their needs because you're speaking up one time for yourself, basically. So we have like that's say we have so many things that's already going against us. So when we start working against ourselves as well, we're just compiling on more stuff that we actually don't need. The system itself is still working against us as Black women. Once we get into positions, it's nice that we start trying to bring other people in that position. But then even sometimes when we start doing that, like it's funny, nothing against Hispanics or anything, but they can go to work and they can sit here and tell the job, oh, I have this person and I have that person and all this, and all of these people will get hired. Now, yes, some of the times these people are working without paperwork, so that's part of the reason why they're getting a pass on some of this. But as soon as you say, oh, I have this friend that's well qualified, and they'll bring them through the whole, interview process and everything. And then they'll be like, no. And you'd be like, why? Well, this person has just as much experience as this person you just brought in from this other race. And I'm speaking because this is what I see a lot of times at my job. They get people in certain positions and then they'll bring all their people in. Well, when we don't have that person in that position, it's hard for us to bring that people in. Or then when our person that's in that position is still not using a privilege that they have in that position to bring people in, it's still a problem. My job is predominantly white-based clientele. So when they're bringing people in, they don't want to see too many darker people in there. Now, the funniest thing, just recently, we had a celebration of life. The celebration of life was a big African-American figure in the community. So most of the club, because I work at a private club, most of the club end up having a whole bunch of African-Americans for this person's, homegoing. And one of the people there happened to be Angela Bassett, who happened to be in there. But it's a brand thing. Everybody wants to run through the halls and it's, oh, Angela Bassett is here and Angela this and that and the third. But if she was just a regular dark-skinned woman, we wouldn't be doing this. If she wasn't just on the Oscars just recently, we wouldn't be doing this. If this man wasn't so prestigious in the community, you wouldn't even be having his celebration of life here. Because it's a social club. And socially, we're not accepted a lot of times unless we make so much money, unless we're doing certain things in the community. So a lot of times we do have to get ourselves in these places to even bring our people along to sit there and say, like when I started this job, particularly 4 years ago, I can count 4 Black people on staff. Today, 2. Well, 3 technically, because my daughter is up on there now. When I see Black people, I'm happy. Like, oh my God, hi. Because I don't. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of hurtful. But I've been qualified. And when they looked at me to hire me, and I know they didn't want to hire me, they want to sit there and go, well, I didn't think you had the tools to do it. I didn't think you had this or whatever, this ability, this capability, because I don't lie on my resume. I put what was recent on my resume. And when I got in here, my work would let you see what it is. But then when I get in there, it is a problem because you feel like you're going to workhorse me because I'm this, but you allow all these other people to play around in your face and not do no job. And so sometimes I feel colorism from outside races more than anybody else in my community. I don't so much feel it a lot of times as from being inside the community so much, so to speak. But I do feel it from other races a lot of times that, oh, because you're light skinned, we let you in. So be glad we let you in. That's how they come at you. You be glad that you just made it here because you barely made it here. You barely passed the paper bag test. You barely, so watch your attitude, watch your tone. You can't be a Black woman in this and speak up for yourself because there's going to be a problem because we really don't kind of want you here in the first place. So, I still get some of that. And I say all that to say it's just like sad that we are still fighting against ourselves when we do still deal with outside forces that are working against us. We're struggling to get ourselves into places so we can bring the next person up. We have to literally build our own to be able to do it. And now that I see like a lot of our sisters are making their way in film and in the film industry, I'm very proud of them for doing what they do. But they too have to still have the responsibility to sit there and grab more of us and say, you know what, come on, let me take you with me. Let me show you how I got here and stop doing that crab in the barrel stuff that we tend to do with each other a lot of times too is, oh, well, I had to research it, so you need to figure it out too. Oh, I had to work this hard, so you got to work this hard too. Bring that person along. Now, if they just don't qualify, it's like, okay, well, I try to bring you along. I try to give you a little bit, but it's not working out. But at least you tried. Not give them a hard time to bring them. Go ahead, Seaway.
I wasn't trying to interrupt, but I have to hop off because I got to take this call. But I didn't want to stop off. Yeah, because this has been a great conversation. I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it's super productive, honestly. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to say bye before I just hop off. But
well, before you leave, do you have any final thoughts or solutions that we can kind of start with? Because we're on our last thing anyway right now because we're almost hitting the 3-hour mark.
I would just say, I like two things, like what Natasha and Queen said. We can recognize, but you also have to figure out a way to move forward and operate. Sometimes you can push through it and shine, and then sometimes you got to know. Sometimes you may figure out that the system is kind of stacked against you, and that may not be the place for you, and these people may not be the people for you. But don't what they say, don't negotiate with yourself. That was something that people say all the time. Don't negotiate with yourself. Get rid of your imposter syndrome and try to shine in spite of this system that we're all in. And then the other thing is what I was saying is just be open. Be open to differing opinions and perspectives. Regardless, we're talking about colorism today, but we touched on so many other isms that exist. And I would just say be open to them all, because if we are each other's advocates across the board, I think that's how we move things forward. So those are my two things. And I appreciate you, Jay, for creating this space and having this conversation. This was great.
Thank you. We'll go around now and just hit their final thoughts with everybody. So Camille, we'll start with you.
Yes, first of all, wonderful conversation. I'm so super appreciative of it. So one thing that I've gathered just by listening to everybody, and this is something that I've always said, is understanding how powerful the media is, social media, television, film. We need to start taking up spaces even more in those areas. We need to be in the editing room. We need to be in the producer's seat. We need to be in the director's seat so we can tell our own stories. And then secondly, understanding that children are our future. We have to do a better job at teaching them. My son is light-skinned, but I'm constantly talking about issues that plague the Black community. So definitely reaching back and teaching that younger generation so they can make the difference that we want to see, that we're talking about right now. So that's it. And I thank you for having me. This was wonderful. Great.
Thank you for spending your birthday weekend with us a little bit. I appreciate you. Queen?
Yeah, thank you. So hold on, my mind went blank. Let me get my thoughts together. I love what Camille says about getting into those places to be able to make decisions and move things along. When we think about Tyree Nichols and the quick response that they had to police brutality, a lot of people didn't understand that the reason why we were able to respond that way is because we have Black people in positions to make a decision. And that's what we do when we're at the table. We call a thing, and we make it right. So the quick response was because people of color were in those seats. And they said, we got to address this immediately. We're not going to do a discovery period. This is going to happen. And I thought that was a great example of when we're there in the right places, of the impacts that we can make, right? So that's a perfect example of being at the table and utilizing your voice to send a statement. The second thing is push through. I'm a huge Melody Cherie supporter, and she came out with a line, and I had to buy 2 of her hoodies because the message is push through, and we have to remember, no matter what we come against, if we can adopt the ideology, I'm going to push through this, whether it's leaving a toxic relationship, self-care, whatever it is that you need for yourself, give yourself permission to push through, even when you don't feel like it. And I think the more we start to show up like that, as opposed to this is what's happening, because see, it's a different story when you say this is what's happening, but this is what I'm going to do about it. And this is how I'm going to respond to that. So that's my message.
Thank you for that. I love that push through. Natasha?
First, thanks for having me. And I'm actually like super late, so I'm going to hop off as well. I know we're wrapping up, but I want to, in addition to what I've already said, I'm not going to repeat myself, but I want to add to it that I think self-love is so important. So I think self-love, not just loving yourself, but always wanting to be a better person. Like I say all the time that I wake up every day just trying to be better than I was the day before. That's a small goal, but it's so huge, because if you do that every day, then you're constantly just like building upon, the foundation that you added to the day before. And every day you might not be able to add much, but just a little sprinkle might be all you could do, but just do that. And then every day just try to be a better person, which, requires some self-reflection and requires you to look at every situation and not figure out who was right and who was wrong, but what could I have done differently that may have resulted in a different, or contributed to a different result. Or maybe I could have done something different and walked away and not been mad or feel this way or hurt or whatever. And the reason why that applies, I think, is because colorism, again, is within our community. So if we have a healthy love for ourselves and we recognize and resonate as Black women, specifically, I'm just going to speak on women because what the men do, I can't really speak to that. And we love ourselves as Black women, then how can we feel any type of way towards another Black woman? So it's like, if you just like pour into yourself and truly love yourself, then it has to exude and pour out from within, from that good place. And I think that will change a lot of it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like specific, because like I said, I try to learn from other people's situations and experiences as well. So even if I'm overhearing a conversation, or someone's talking to me and saying, oh, she just got that because of this, I'm like, well, why do you think that? Like, I don't think that's it. Didn't you say that she went to, this school, or that she had this job before, or what? Like, speak up on those things and speak from a place of love, the same way you would speak up for someone who you do know, and maybe like a family member or your close friend or whatever. I can speak up like that about y'all. Like if somebody say like, oh, well, at this point she made da-da-da. Oh, well, I think she was coming from here. And, it's all about love. Just start exuding like that positivity. And I think that really has to start with like the inside, and just loving yourself and loving yourself for who you are. And me, at the core, regardless of my complexion, regardless of the texture of my hair, I'm a Black woman and I'm proud of it. And I love all my Black women too, except for the ones who get sideways, but I'm gonna try to get you together. But I just love y'all through and through. So that's what I want to leave with. So big hug. Thanks for having me.
Amen. Before you go, tell them where they can find you.
Social media is probably the easiest. The Lit Lawyer, I'm everywhere. But if you or a loved one has been injured in an auto accident or something else, I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding.
No, promote yourself, darling. Go ahead.
My firm is Harrison Advocates. So the website is www.harrisonadvocates.com. We have a great chat feature on there where you can put whatever your, legal inquiry, whatever you need help with, through the chat feature, and it'll come to all the people that it needs to come to within the firm, and then we can reach out and get in touch with you. You can also find more information about the areas of practice that we specialize in. But yeah, the Lit Lawyer, that's where you find me on Instagram. I check the DM sometimes. Unless you're talking foolishness again, I will get you together. But I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for taking your time out. I know you got to go. I'm just going to leave the closing thoughts. I love what Natasha said. That has always been my point. When you filled up with self-love, you don't have time to hate on nobody. I've always learned that it's hard to argue with people's experiences. So get to know people. Just get to know people. Just take the time out to just sit there, step out of your comfort zone and say, you know what, let me find out about this person. Especially if people is talking bad about them or whatnot. That should make you really find out whether or not that person is really a bad person or those people just had a bad experience with those people. Because sometimes we be going through our own little things and people cross us at the wrong time. And we don't mean to take it out on them. But we do, and we give it to them. So sometimes some of us are just in our own heads, and we got to get out of that. We got to get out of our own way as a community. You got to start pouring love back into ourselves and our community. And as Camille said, once we get into our spaces of media, we got to start telling our own stories. Can't be doing it for the Oscars. We can't be doing it for the Grammys and the Image Awards and all of these things, because those are not designed for us all the time. And Candy had pointed it out. I know a lot of us is mad that Auntie Angela did not win. She does deserve it. But when they get into that room, a lot of times it's a popularity contest on the name. It's not about what she has done. A lot of people do not watch these shows. All they see is a name that they recognize and whatnot. And not to say that her name is not recognizable, but Jamie Lee Curtis' name is a little bit more recognized because her family has been in film a long time. So there's a difference with that. A lot of these people don't know who we are. So we got to make them see us sometimes. And so that's going to be through telling our own stories, getting behind one another, and fronting our own films. And fronting our own voice. They're going to get to love us, and they're going to have no choice but to vote us. Angela going to get hers. Don't worry. Baby been doing her thing and whatnot, and we see her. Okay, she going to get it. She does the same thing, and every single thing brings it, okay? Mama been bringing it for a long time. She's not going to stop now. And I wanted to address one thing on that, too. She's human. It was not her skin. I know these people would like to try to throw in her skin tone and all this stuff to make her feel like she wasn't supposed to have a human reaction in that moment. It was okay for her to have a human reaction and be disappointed, because if I worked hard as an athlete to win a championship game, I'm going to feel some type of way when the game is over and I did not win. If I worked hard to win me an Oscar, I'm going to feel some type of way when I did not win. That does not take away from how she felt about Jamie Lee Curtis, or to say that she didn't feel that Jamie might have deserved it or whatnot. Regardless of how she felt, she's human, and she felt disappointed that she was not recognized in that moment. And that's what that was. But we recognize you, sis. We love you. I love you all on this panel. I appreciate you ladies for taking your time out again. Queen, we and you will speak on the background because I want to have some more of these conversations. I put down in the description box the colorism topic that Queen had brought up and the conversation that was there. It is another 3-hour conversation. Sorry to do it to you, but it was a great conversation and I was there listening to it. And if you guys do not know, this lady brings some wonderful content. I love the way she moderates. She speaks so smooth and nice. I have yet to see her get up in the upper age or whatnot. You know, when she
even with the guy with the 7 kids that I had on the other day.
I watched that one the other day too.
Yeah, everybody's like, "Oh my God, you're so objective." You have to be like that. That's my guest. You see what I'm saying? That's my guest. Yeah, that was a different kind of conversation.
Yes, you have to watch it, Camille. He got 7 kids, 7 different baby mamas, and he's one of them. I told y'all I didn't want no kids, so don't look for me to take care of them. And I love the way that conversation went. I sat there and listened to it all through it yesterday or Thursday. Sat and listened to it, and the way that Queen conducted herself through that whole panel was amazing. It was a beautiful. I know a lot of us, your face, Camille, is how a lot of us was probably feeling about that brother. But by the time we got through it, we was hearing him out. We kind of understand where he was coming from. He a little older, he a little over there, but We kind of understood, we weren't riding with them, but we understood. But I implore you guys to go check out her channel. I know a lot of you guys are over here from her, and I'm sorry if I'm saying you guys, you ladies as well, are over here from her channel. I appreciate you being here. She is a beautiful place, and you guys are beautiful people to have over here as well, because I love the way you guys conduct yourself in her chats as well. I appreciate you all. If you guys are watching this on the replay, please leave a like, share, and comment down below. If you disagree with things that we say, it is okay, baby. I love it because I love a discourse. I love to go back and forth because that's the only way we come to understanding sometimes, if we got to push back a little bit. That's why I gave Natasha a little bit of pushback on her myth comment, and look where we got with that. She beautifully explained it all the way through, so y'all understand she doesn't feel like it is a myth, because we know it's not. But the word is that it is a disguise that we're sitting here kind of keep pushing to the side to pretend that it doesn't exist. So
it stems from, but one more saying, no one has a monopoly on knowledge. So whenever you sit down to talk to anybody, like you can't just think that you're always going to teach somebody something or just say your part and then la 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 la. We got 2 ears, 1 mouth. Like, be open to learn, because you can learn literally from every and anybody.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I love having these discussions with various people, because I know, as a wise person, I know nothing at all, okay? So, I don't know Jack, but I do love listening to other people's perspective, because it helps me come to a better understanding, and how my logic is I can coexist in the world with anybody, as long as I understand where you're coming from and know where to put you. So with that being said, thank you all for being with us today. Bless your hearts. Happy Saturday to you all. And we'll be back again, probably on Queen Shiba's channel, having some more discussions just like it. Love you all. Bye.